is picking at different details of credibility. I don't think that she can get to an end point.
If you're waiting for that grand aha
it's not
moment,
right?
So I think that's important to keep in mind here as we watch senators start to trickle back into the room here. So we have let's just set up the timeline here now for everyone. We have to hear still from how many senators? And that's Republican and Democratic.
Well, we know that Mitchell, there are 3 more rounds of Republican senators that she will be speaking for. So that's a total of 15 minutes of questioning that she has before her. And then on the Democratic side, I don't know whether it's 3 or 4, but it's roughly the equivalent.
Mm-hmm. So 2 hours and 40 minutes so far of Christine Blasey Ford. We're looking at another 40 to 60 minutes, something like that.
At least.
And then we're talking about a break because she doesn't want to be in the same room with Brett Kavanaugh, but then he would be questioned for, one would think, around the same time. So we started at 10 o'clock this morning. If Christine Blasey Ford's questioning ends 2-ish, that's sort of the time frame we're looking at this afternoon as the nation remains captivated by all that we're seeing here right now.
Well, she started out by saying that she was terrified to be here today, and she certainly looks terrified. They had a very touching moment, I thought, when Senator Blumenthal was congratulating her, encouraging her, and thanking her for coming forward. She really looked like she wanted to cry at that moment. And I thought it was interesting that Senator Blumenthal brought up his colleague, Senator Lindsey Graham, to pick from writings of Senator Lindsey Graham, who talked about how difficult it is for victims to come forward and speak up. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to ask Jan, if you're Brett Kavanaugh's legal team and you're watching this, what are you taking away from it as you try to construct what he's going to do when he comes under questioning?
I think that he is keeping his focus. I don't, and if he's watching this, I'm not so sure. I think he is keeping his focus, and he wrote this statement himself. It was not vetted by the White House. It is his words. And I think that they don't want him to be influenced by anything that they saw from her this morning, because it's now going to be, when it's his turn, he has to somehow come across as equally credible. And if he's speaking from the heart, and this is what he means, and this is what he feels, that's what people can connect with. You know, we saw Senator Klobuchar and several people make the point that, you know, this is a job interview for the Supreme Court. It is no longer a job interview for Brett Kavanaugh. This is not about a seat on the Supreme Court. It's about a life.
It's his
life.
This
is his integrity, his name. However, it's the same thing that Clarence Thomas said. He's worked his entire life to build this name, his character, his integrity, his family, his children. That's what this is about now. So in many ways, when Kavanaugh begins to speak, this is much more for him than whether he's going to serve on the United States Supreme Court.
He's talking about his life, Jan, but Dr. Ford said she felt it was her civic duty to come forward.
No, these are just the stakes.
Which I think is also so interesting. That she did not want to be here, and that if he hadn't made it until the final round, she tried to get it before he got on the short list.
And she made that was interesting, too.
And I thought that added to her credibility.
Yes.
What Jan's put her finger on, though, is the emotional resonance for him, because people have had an emotional reaction to Dr. Ford in terms of her credibility, her suffering, the pathos of connecting to her. So what does Brett Kavanaugh bring to the table that has that accesses that same emotion? I think what Jan's saying is he is feeling a personal attack on his honor. It's not just about a job position here, and presumably that will be his effort to try to counter the emotional, what we've seen emotionally so far.
And what he's been advised to do is forget about the Fox interview, forget about being careful. You just have to talk. What is it like? What are you feeling? You speak from the heart.
And it's certainly possible that both witnesses can come across as not being evasive and being as honest as they appear, as they're trying to be, at least. So in other words, they both could have what could be termed successful testimony, and then it's up to the senators to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to vote.
It's also the fact, Jeff, that I think we haven't discussed, which is, let's assume, just for the moment, let's assume he's confirmed. He has to go into that court as someone who has now gone public in terms of the Fox interview, but has also had to be part of these events, to a court of the group of 8 who are notoriously private. They do not want cameras in their courtroom. They do not want their pictures out there in the world. They do not like things that take away from the dignity and integrity of the United States Supreme Court. So even if he is confirmed, you will have protesters outside for a long, long time. He may not be embraced, to say the least, in the collegiality of the court.
That's a good point. I think the other point to keep in mind here is that no matter what happens with the vote, both of these lives have been irrevocably changed.
And their families.
Forever.
Forever. It was interesting that when the hearing started, Senator Grassley said, "I'd like to apologize." He started the hearing with an apology, guys, to both sides, to say they both had a terrible couple of weeks. They have both received death threats. They have both received, they have both been accused of terrible things, and that he wanted to lead this hearing with decorum, with civility. So far, so good. But there did seem to be a moment between Senator Grassley and Senator Klobuchar, too.
Over the question of whether to allow the polygraph, yes, when he said...
There did seem to be a little tension between the two of them at that moment.
You got what you wanted. That should have been enough. That was, yeah.
And it's also when Dr. Russ's lawyer, Dr. Ford's lawyer got involved by putting out there that we wanted to call the polygrapher to this end in this hearing. And so the only way I know that you could look at the underlying data of the polygraph and have it explained would be if you had the polygrapher. You can't just throw that data at the senator.
Prosecutor Mitchell tried to make a point about that with the polygraph expert. Like, why did they do it in a hotel room? Why was it happen there? Because they were talking about flying, it seemed, and she said, well, I left my grandmother's funeral, so even that seemed like she was trying to land something there, but that didn't go very far either.
No.
And what does it mean for Mitchell's questioning, Ricky, in your estimation, when it's 5 minutes and then stop? And then,
it's a disastrous situation for Mitchell or anyone who would be sitting in her shoes. You can't get momentum. You cannot get to a point that you're trying to get to and then have it broken up by 5 minutes of someone else and come back to it as if you weren't interrupted. It just doesn't work. The other thing that happened...
Can you get momentum, Ricky, when you only have 5 minutes to question anyway?
Very, very tough. We'll watch with Kamala Harris.
Okay.
We'll see what momentum is. But one of the things I do think, too, about civility and the beginning with the really thoughtful position of Senator Grassley at the beginning, that when Brett Kavanaugh comes to testify, there have been a couple of these moments of where people have gotten at each other. But if the Democrats go after Kavanaugh in a way that does not appear to be respectful, that's a mistake.
Let's go to Nora. She's still on Capitol Hill. Nora?
Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted to point out, too, one of the things that was mentioned earlier, there are actually 6 senators left, 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats. And in fact, it is pretty interesting when you look at who actually is coming up. To stay tuned to this next part of this hearing, Nancy Cordes is here with me. 3 really interesting Democratic senators.
Correct. Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, who obviously has gotten so much attention throughout this process, saying at one point men need to step up or they need to shut up. She has been very outspoken about women being believed. And then you have Kamala Harris of California, former Attorney General of the state of California.
Who is considered a likely 2020 contender for president.
Along with Cory Booker of New Jersey, who is also yet to question Christine Blasey Ford and had that Spartacus moment at the confirmation hearings for Judge Kavanaugh. And so where they go with their questions is very important. But I think it's also important to step back and remember at the end of the day that this is not a legal process. It is a political process. And no matter how believable Christine Blasey Ford is, if Republicans believe that this is their once-in-a-lifetime chance to change the direction of the court, they may ignore that.
They're going to vote. One of the questions, a couple of big things we talked about here, whether she is politically motivated, whether this has been a con job, has been described by the president in another allegation, whether this is a sham, a smear by a Democratic-leaning group. She seemed to put that to rest today, Dr. Ford.
Right, and something came up that interestingly hasn't come up a lot in the past couple of weeks, which is that she began to come forward and reach out to the Washington Post and her congresswoman before Kavanaugh was even nominated, when he was on a short list of other conservative lawyers and judges. And had she been politically motivated to bring down a Republican nominee, why did she report what had happened allegedly between herself and Kavanaugh before he was ever nominated, when, you know, there were several other conservative judges who were on the list as well.
This falls under the credibility of these people who have challenged Judge Kavanaugh. The first is they're politically motivated. The second one, a case of mistaken identity, one that she probably was assaulted or could have been assaulted, but it wasn't Judge Kavanaugh. You saw the Democrats really try and bolster her credibility today, multiple times asking her, is she absolutely sure? She answered the question, I am 100% sure that it was Brett Kavanaugh who sexually assaulted me. And then, interestingly, she spoke specifically about why she remembers it. And there was that line, as all of you remember, she said, indelible in the hippocampus is the laughter, the uproarious laughter between the two, and they're having fun at my expense. Think about what she described. Not that they just assaulted her, but then they laughed at her and mocked her. And that, to me, was one of the most chilling moments of the morning when she said that. Also, another time in the testimony, specifically referencing, well, how do you know it's him? Senator Feinstein asked. And she said, the same way I know I'm talking to you, basic memory function. She said the level of norepinephrine and epinephrine in the brain that codes memories in the brain. She is trying to specifically plant in people's mind that there had been a physiological response to the trauma that implanted or printed on her memory this thing that happened 36 years ago, because it has been the question of credibility that it's been the center of this, that everyone asked, how can you remember something so long ago, especially when people were drinking?
And Patrick Leahy of Vermont, who is a longtime Democrat, was on the committee back when Anita Hill testified, made a very interesting point at the start of this hearing. He said, any practiced liar can come up with a story in which every detail is recalled. But in the case of normal human memory, there are going to be things that you remember and things that you don't remember. And the fact that she's honest about what she recalls and what she doesn't makes her more believable in his eyes.
And here is that exchange with Senator Leahy, as you point out, who was back on the Senate Judiciary Committee some 27 years ago. Here is him speaking to that very issue of what happened and the laughter that was involved. I apologize. The control room had said that was ready, but I think I described it accurately, yes. Which was that there was that indelible moment that seared in her mind. That idea that someone was mocking you in that moment. As you point out, we have 3 more Democratic senators that will ask specific questions, as well as 15 minutes by the special prosecutor.
Correct. And then we know that Judge Kavanaugh has left his home. He's on his way here. There will probably be a short break once she has finished. She has said she doesn't want to be in the same room as Judge Kavanaugh, so she will depart. He will take that hot seat. And while she has asked for periodic breaks, this is all very new to her, he's pretty comfortable in this setting. We saw that in his confirmation hearings. He sat there all day long. He said, I don't need a break. And so we expect that his testimony will probably go straight through, and you'll go through all of the 21 senators. And the question is, will Republicans continue to defer to Rachel Mitchell, the prosecutor, or because they have this comfort level with him, the optics are different, they aren't grilling a potential female victim, will they want to converse with him themselves?
Yeah. The very question, in talking with both Democratic and Republican senators this morning, the Democrats have told me they are going to get graphic. This is going to be a question of his character and his credibility. They're going to ask him whether he was stumbling drunk on multiple occasions, not only in high school, but in college. They're going to ask him about the things that he wrote on his yearbook page when he was an 18-year-old senior in high school, about the types of activities he was engaged in. They are going to ask him about his sexual history, the truthfulness that he gave, whether he was truthful when he, in that Fox News interview, said that he was a virgin for a while after. The Democrats say they're going to go there. I mean, that's what we're going to see this afternoon. And then a Republican Senator, Lindsey Graham, said to me, if they do that, I'm going to get in their grill. The fireworks are going to happen this afternoon.
And I can guarantee you're going to see a fight between Democrats and Republicans about whether it's appropriate to discuss in this hearing accusations by the 2 other women who have come forward, Deborah Ramirez and Ms. Swetnick, because Republicans will say, we're here to talk about this allegation. But Democrats are trying to establish that there's a pattern here. And so they're going to want to talk about those accusations.
And Jan Crawford, I want to ask you about this because, Jan, you had really mentioned before about how he's not just fighting for this job, he's fighting now for his integrity as a person. And you have done some of the most interesting analysis on this, having covered Justice Thomas, who, despite what happened, was ultimately confirmed. But I know you believe it has actually affected his jurisprudence and how he has ruled on the court and his entire life, right?
Well, and certainly before, in the reporting I did when I was writing my book, before the kind of strategy was unrolled that they were going to try to block Thomas and have the Hill hearings, there were voices in the Democratic Party that said, if we are going to try to do this, if we're going to do this to Clarence Thomas, we have to win. Because if he gets on the court after what he's been put through, we've lost him forever. You know, he might have been open to certain arguments. He might have been, but they took that gamble anyway. And of course, he's become probably the most conservative justice on the Supreme Court. He doesn't really compromise his own views at all. He does not care what the media thinks at all. He does not care what people write about him. He believes he told his story. He was 100% falsely accused, and the media didn't listen. The Democrats didn't listen. They subjected him to what he believes was a travesty. He's described it as he died. The person he was before died the day he found out that he was going to have to go through this.
Is that the tactic you think that Kavanaugh should take or is taking?
I think what Kavanaugh has been advised, and I think it just is in terms of just human nature, it has to be accurate, that you can't be someone else. And Brett Kavanaugh is not Clarence Thomas. Brett Kavanaugh grew up outside Washington, D.C. He went to an elite boarding school. Clarence Thomas grew up in poverty,
yes.
Integrating all-white schools. He fought and scratched his way to where he was going to be. Not that Kavanaugh didn't work hard for it. Very different backgrounds, very different people. So if he comes out angry and really pushing back on Democrats, as Thomas did, it's remarkable to go back and look at those transcripts, how he was lashing out at the Senate for what they were doing to a life he had built and was proud of. If Kavanaugh, it may not ring true, he has to be Brett Kavanaugh, and however this is affecting him.
But so far what he said, Jan, is that this is crazy town, and that crazy town, that this is a total smear campaign.
Right.
That's been his tactic so far.
And also he said that it was like Twilight Zone. Like, what is this? He doesn't. So whatever response we see from Kavanaugh, it better be a sincere one if he expects people to kind of connect with what he's saying.
And isn't the political question at the end of the day whether by the time this day is over, whether Republicans who were moving to confirm Kavanaugh anyway have been given something to hang on to afresh to say, I'm going to continue going in that direction, or has a roadblock been thrown up for a handful of Republicans, maybe one or two, maybe two, that keeps them from going on the direction they were previously going? So it's one storyline that either says I can continue going in that direction, or one, why I went off that path.
And I think the other storyline you'll see emerging from Rachel Mitchell's questioning potentially here this afternoon is that there's more focus on the timing of the introduction of the accusation, I think, the how and the why, versus the actual assault and what happened back then. You can see that. I mean, Mitchell's basically finished with the questioning of what happened in 1982 or the early 80s, and now it's talking about the timing, and that is what happened between July and
I'm actually
today.
really surprised by that. I thought there would have been questions about how long did she think the assault was, and that suggests to me that this is purely mistaken identity. They're not going to try to say, like, well, maybe, you know, it really didn't happen the way you remember it. You know, maybe it was just horseplay. You know, if he was really trying to rape you, he could have certainly gotten to a swimsuit, wouldn't have let you go. You know, there have been no questions along the lines of how long was this assault. Could, if someone were trying to rape you, why didn't they? None of that. So it suggests to me that if we don't hear that, this is purely going to be, this wasn't Brett Kavanaugh. This may have happened exactly like you described, but it wasn't Brett Kavanaugh.
And
that's going to be the defense.
They'll just assert that, not try to build a fact pattern.
No,
to
I think they are going to try to build a fact pattern. There are
They've only got 3 more questioners to go.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, in this process right now,
a fact pattern to
say that it was somebody else other than Kavanaugh.
Right. Right. For example, if there were music upstairs blaring, but it was very quiet downstairs where one of your close friends was, and then all of a sudden you go upstairs, there's music, and then it turns off, and they fall down the stairs, and then you run out of the room, why wouldn't your friend remember that? So, you know, there will be moments. I mean, we saw that established this morning, that there was no music downstairs, but there was loud music. So
but Jan,
you will
how
see.
far can you get with it's not Brett Kavanaugh when someone says, I'm 100% certain, just as certain as I am looking from you to her?
That's where the therapist notes come in. That's where all of the questions that she was asking this morning about.
But she has always identified Brett Kavanaugh.
Not by name. Not according to her husband, but in the therapist's notes, his name is not mentioned, and then she's not provided. Again, I'm not. These are things that kind of came out this morning.
But
so
she
you
told
go
friends
to the
he was
memory.
a judge. She had told friends he was a judge. She might not have named his name, but she said he was a prominent judge.
But not for 30 years.
And she also has always assumed it was Brett Kavanaugh, but hasn't said it was Brett Kavanaugh. She is not going to waver from that. It's one of the things about cross-examination, about just dealing with her memory. We don't know not only how long the assault may have taken place, we don't know what the lighting was. We don't know, with a lot of factors about how she observed them. And if you decide, and memory experts could tell you, if you decide that someone did something, and then you remember, what you remember is your memory, not the fact.
I know this
Ricky,
isn't
as we
a
look
court
at
of
the
law.
screen, Gail, apologies, because Christine Blasey Ford has been seated now once again as she continues what would be, I guess, part 3 of the first part of this hearing before we hear from Judge Kavanaugh. You see the bottle of Coke next to her. She asked for that caffeine.
Yes, I saw. Yeah,
right
I saw
after she first started.
But Ricky, I know she's
we're hearing now
like,
from
they're
Chuck
getting ready
Grassley.
to
So
start.
let's listen in, I think, if we could.
I'm just organizing my papers. I'll be ready in
Next section of the hearing.
20 seconds. Thank you. I'm ready.
Okay. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, is it your intent to cede all Republican senators' time to your prosecutor rather than they themselves ceding their time to her?
Yes.
We all know that the prosecutor, even though this clearly is not a criminal proceeding, is asking Dr. Ford all kinds of questions about what happened before and after, but basically not during the attack. The prosecutor should know that sexual assault survivors often do not remember peripheral information such as what happened before or after the traumatic event. And yet, she will persist in asking these questions, all to undermine the memory and basically the credibility of Dr. Ford. But we all know Dr. Ford's memory of the assault is very clear. Dr. Ford, the Republicans prosecutor has asked you all kinds of questions about who you called and when, asking details that would be asked in a cross-examination of a witness in a criminal trial. But this is not a criminal proceeding. This is a confirmation proceeding. I think I know what she's trying to get at. So I'll just ask you very plainly, Dr. Ford, is there a political motivation for your coming forward with your account of the assault by Brett Kavanaugh?
No, and I'd like to reiterate that, again, I was trying to get the information to you while there was still a list of other,
Thank you.
what looked like equally qualified candidates.
And yet they're not here to testify. Dr. Ford, I'd like to join my colleagues who have thanked you for coming forward today. And we all admire you for what you're doing. And I understand why you have come forward. You wanted us and the American people to know what you knew about the character of the man we are considering for a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. I want to take a moment also to note the significant personal sacrifices you've made to come forward to share your traumatic experience with us and the American people. You've had to move, you've had death threats, all manner of basically re-victimization experiences have come your way. But by coming forward, you have inserted the question of character into this nomination and hopefully back into American life, and rightly so. We should be made to face the question of who it is we are putting in positions of power and decision-making in this country. We should look the question square in the face: does character matter? Do our values, our real values about what is right and what is wrong, and about whether we treat our fellow human beings with dignity and respect, do they matter anymore? I believe they do. And I believe the reaction we have seen to this coverage right now and your courage all over this country shows us that we're not alone. You're not alone. That women and men all across America are disgusted and sick and tired of the way basic human decency has been driven from our public life. The president admits on tape to assaulting women. He separates children from their parents. He takes basic health care protections from those who need them most. He nominates and stands behind a man who stands credibly accused of a horrible act. I again want to thank you for coming forward. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that on 6 items consisting of various statements, letters, fact sheet, posts are inserted into the record.
Is that one request, or you want me to wait for 6?
Well, I have 6 separate items.
Okay.
They consist, I can go over them for you.
Okay, no.
I would like to...
Let me not interrupt you.
Okay.
Your request is accepted without objection.
Thank you. And I would like to read from an item that has already been entered into the record, but this is from a letter from the National Task Force to End Sexual and Domestic Violence. The letter states, and I quote this letter, "This moment has become a crucible. It's a test of our progress. Do we start by believing victims of sexual assault and treating them with dignity, or don't we? So far, Senate leaders are failing that test, prejudging the outcome of the hearing, sympathizing with her perpetrator, attacking her credibility. They send a message to every victim of sexual violence that their pain doesn't matter, that they do not deserve justice, and that for them, fair treatment is out of reach. This will only serve to drive victims into the shadows and further embolden abusers." Once again, Dr. Ford, thank you very much. This is a moment for our country. Mahalo.
Senator, Ms. Mitchell for Senator Crapo.
Good afternoon. Hi. When we left off, we were still talking about the polygraph, and I believe you said it hasn't been paid for yet. Is that correct?
Let me put an end to this mystery. Her lawyers have paid for her polygraph.
As is routine.
As is routine.
Dr. Ford, do you expect the price of that polygraph to be passed on to you?
I'm not sure yet. I haven't taken a look at all of the costs involved in this. We've relocated now twice, so I haven't kept track of all of that paperwork, but I'm sure I have a lot of work to do to catch up on all of that later.
I get you have a lot going on, and you've had that for several months. But is it your understanding that someone else is going to assist you with some of these fees, including the cost for your polygraph?
I'm aware that there's been several GoFundMe sites that I haven't had a chance to figure out how to manage those because I've never had one
and I'm sorry,
done for me.
Several what?
GoFundMe sites that have raised money primarily for our security detail. So I'm not even quite sure how to collect that money and how to distribute it yet. I haven't been able to focus on that.
Okay. In your testimony this morning, you stated that Senator Feinstein sent you a letter on August 31st of this year. Is that right?
August 31st. Let me see. I sent her a letter on July 30th, and I don't have the date. I'd have to pull up my email to find out the date of her email to me saying that it was right before the hearings that she was going to maintain the confidentiality of the letter.
Say that again. It was till right before the hearings.
That's my memory, but I can look it up for you if you would like the exact date. I could pull it up on my email.
Oh, yeah. I want to make sure.
Counsel?
I want to make sure I understood what you said.
That document's been turned over to, in response to a request for documents. You have it.
Thank you, counsel. I want to make sure I understood what you said. Was it your understanding it was going to be kept confidential up until right before the hearing?
It was my understanding that it was going to be kept confidential, period.
Period? Okay. Between your polygraph on August the 7th and your receipt of the letter from Senator Feinstein, did you or anyone on your behalf speak to any member of Congress or congressional staff about these allegations?
I personally did not.
So my question was, did you or anybody on your behalf?
What do you mean? Did someone speak for me?
Somebody that is working with you or helping you, did somebody at your behest, on your behalf, speak to somebody in Congress or staff?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure how those exchanges went, but I didn't speak to anyone.
Okay. Is it possible that somebody did?
I think so. It would be possible. I'm guessing it would be possible, but I don't know.
Okay.
Excuse me, you've asked her not to guess, and now you're asking her what's possible. So I think if you want to ask her what she knows, you should ask her what she knows.
Is that an objection, counsel?
It is
I'll have the chair rule on that.
I don't know what I don't understand.
Unless there's a legal reason for not answering it, on advice of your counsel.
So I don't totally understand the question, but I didn't speak with anyone during that time frame other than my counsel.
Okay. You've said repeatedly that you did not think that that letter that you wrote on July 30th was going to be released to the public. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And is it true that you did not authorize it to be released at any time?
Correct.
Okay. Besides your attorneys, did you provided that letter to Senator Feinstein, is that correct?
I provided her a letter on July 30th.
We're talking about the July 30th letter.
Okay.
And you provided that letter to Senator Feinstein, correct? Is that a yes?
Yes.
And you provided the letter to Representative Eshoo to deliver to Senator Feinstein?
Yes.
Besides those two individuals, Representative Eshoo and Senator Feinstein, and your attorneys, did you provide that letter to anyone else?
No.
Do you know how that letter became public?
No.
After that letter was made public or leaked, did you reach back out to the Washington Post?
I reached out to the Washington, well, they were continuously reaching out to me, and I was not responding. But the time that I did respond and agree to do the sit-down was once the reporters started showing up at my home and at my workplace.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Ford, thank you for being here. I just want to remind everyone that this is not a courtroom. This is not a legal proceeding. You are here under your own volition. And though that a prosecutor has been engaged here to represent my colleagues, you're here, as you said, out of a civic duty. And I want to join my colleagues that it's really more than that. You know, our founding documents talk about civic duty. Our Declaration of Independence talks about, for this country, pledging your lives, your fortunes, and your sacred honor. And anybody who's read your testimony knows what you've had to sacrifice by coming forward. Your life has been upended. You have received vicious, hateful threats, death threats. You've had to move out of your family home to some expense, I imagine, to you and your family. You've had to engage security to some expense. You've had to deal with incredible challenges. And what's amazing, and I want to join my colleagues in thanking you for your courage and bravery in coming forward, all to help us deal with one of the most important obligations a senator has, to advise and consent on one of the branches of our government, the highest courts in the land, an individual going before a lifetime appointment. And you even said that the president had a lot of folks on that list, and your fear was that this individual who assaulted you would ascend to that seat. That's correct, right?
Correct.
Yes, and it is correct that you have given a lot of resources, taken a lot of threats to come forward, correct?
Correct.
Assaults on your dignity and your humanity?
Absolutely.
How has it affected your children?
They're doing fairly well considering. Thank you for asking.
And your husband?
Doing fairly well considering. Yeah, thank you. We have a very supportive community.
That's good to hear. I want to use a different word for your courage, because this is more, as much as this hearing is about a Supreme Court justice, the reality is by you coming forward, your courage, you are affecting the culture of our country. We have a wonderful nation, an incredible culture, but there are dark elements that allow unacceptable levels of sexual assault and harassment that are affecting girls and boys and affecting men and women, from big media outlets to corporations to factory floors to servers in restaurants to our intimate spaces in homes and apartments all around this country. I stepped out during the break and was deluged with notes from friends all around the country, social media posts, that there are literally hundreds of thousands of people watching your testimony right now. And note after note that I got, people in tears, feeling pain and anguish, not just feeling your pain, but feeling their own, who have not come forward. You are opening up to open air hurt and pain that goes on across this country. And for that, the word I would use, it's nothing short of heroic. Because what you're doing for our nation right now, besides giving testimony germane to one of the most sacred obligations of our offices, is you are speaking truth that this country needs to understand. And how we deal with survivors who come forward right now is unacceptable. And the way we deal with this, unfortunately, allows for the continued darkness of this culture to exist. And your brilliance, shining light onto this, speaking your truth, is nothing short of heroic. But to the matter at hand, one of my colleagues who I have a lot of respect for, and I do consider him a friend, went to the Senate floor and spoke truth to both sides of the political aisle. Senator Flake said yesterday, this is a lifetime appointment, and this is said to be a deliberative body. In the interest of due diligence and fairness, her claims must be fully aired and considered. I agree with him. But you've asked for things that would give a full airing, from corroborating witnesses to be called. You've submitted to an intrusive polygraph test. Can you answer for me, how do you feel that all the things that could have been done thoroughly to help this deliberative body have not been honored in this so-called investigation?
I wish that I could be more helpful and that others could be more helpful and that we could collaborate in a way that would get at more information.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to introduce for the record 7 letters from Lambda Legal, from Mormon Women for Ethical Government, youth-led organizations around this country, the international unions, bricklayers, allied craft workers, a letter from 295 survivors of sexual violence in support of Dr. Ford, and a letter from 1,600 men. It's a campaign in support of Dr. Ford, and those who want to assert, men and women, that survivors of sexual violence are not opportunists, do not have political axes to grind, but are coming forward with courage and with heart to speak their truth and try to end the scourge of sexual assault and violence in our country.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator Tillis, Ms. Mitchell for Senator Tillis.
Dr. Ford, in choosing attorneys, did anyone help you with the choice on who to choose?
Various people referred me to lawyers that they knew in the Washington, D.C. area. So as you know, I grew up in this area, so I asked some family members and friends, and they referred me to like divorce attorneys that might know somebody that might know somebody, and I ended up interviewing several law firms from the D.C. area.
And did anybody besides friends and family refer you to any attorneys?
I think that the staff of Dianne Feinstein's office suggested the possibility of some attorneys.
Okay. Including the two that are sitting on either side of you?
Not both of them, no.
Okay. We've heard a lot about FBI investigations. When did you personally first request an FBI investigation?
How many weeks ago? I don't know. I guess when we first started talking about the possibility of a hearing, I was hoping that there would be a more thorough investigation.
Would that investigation have been something that you would have submitted to an interview?
I would be happy to cooperate with the FBI, yes.
Would you have been happy to submit to an interview by staff members from this committee?
Absolutely.
Okay. Besides, you mentioned some GoFundMe accounts. Besides those, are there any other efforts outside of your own personal finances to pay for your legal fees or any of the costs incurred?
It's my understanding that some of my team is working on a pro bono basis, but I don't know the exact details. And there are members of the community in Palo Alto that have the means to contribute to help me with the security detail, et cetera.
Have you been provided?
I think I can help you with that. Both counsel are doing this pro bono. We are not being paid, and we have no expectation of being paid. Thank you, counsel.
Have you seen any of the questions that I was going to ask you today?
No.
You've been asked a few questions by other people as well. Have you seen any of those questions in advance?
No.
Have you been told them in advance?
No.
And likewise with my questions, have you been told my questions in advance?
Definitely not.
Okay. You mentioned about some possible information, such as when Mark Judge worked at the supermarket. I want to ask you about someone else. You mentioned that there was a classmate who was really sort of the connection between you and Brett Kavanaugh. Who was this person?
I think that case with Mr. Whalen, who was looking at my LinkedIn page and then trying to blame the person, I just don't feel like it's right for us to be talking about that.
I'm not trying to blame anybody. I just want to know who the common friend that you and...
The person that Mr. Whalen was trying to say looked like Mr. Kavanaugh.
Okay. How long did you know this person?
Maybe for a couple of months we socialized, but he also was a member of the same country club, and I knew his younger brother as well.
Okay. So a couple months before this took place?
Yes.
Okay. How would you characterize your relationship with him both before and after this took place, this person?
He was somebody that we used the phrase I went out with. I wouldn't say date. I went out with for a few months. That was how we termed it at the time. And after that, we were distant friends and ran into each other periodically at Columbia Country Club, but I didn't see him often. But I saw his brother and him several times.
Was this person the only common link between you and Judge Kavanaugh?
He's the only one that I would be able to name right now that I would like to not name, but you know who I mean. But there are certainly other members of Columbia Country Club that were common friends, or they were more acquaintances of mine and friends of Mr. Kavanaugh.
Okay. Can you describe all of the other social interactions that you had with Mr. Kavanaugh?
Briefly, yes, I can. There were, during freshman and sophomore year, particularly my sophomore year, which would have been his junior year of high school, 4 to 5 parties that my friends and I attended that were attended also by him.
Okay. Did anything happen at these events, like we're talking about, besides the time we're talking about?
You can answer that question, then I'll go to Senator Harris. Go ahead and answer that question.
There was no sexual assault at any of those events. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes, those were just parties.
Or anything inappropriate is what I'm asking.
Well, maybe we can go into more detail when there's more time. I feel time pressure on that question.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm happy to answer in further detail if you want me to.
I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish answering your question.
Oh, okay. Did you want me to describe those parties? Or
Shouldn't we leave this to the next round, Mr. Chairman?
Answer the question.
I'm just happy to describe them if you wanted me to, and I'm happy to not. It's just whatever you want.
Maybe this will
whatever is your preference.
Cut to the chase. My question is, was there anything else that was sexually inappropriate, any inappropriate sexual behavior on the part of Mr. Kavanaugh towards you at any of these other functions?
No.
Okay.
Senator Harris.
Dr. Ford, first of all, just so we can level set, you know you are not on trial. You are not on trial. You are sitting here before members of the United States Senate's Judiciary Committee because you had the courage to come forward, because as you have said, you believe it was your civic duty. I was struck in your testimony by what you indicated as your intention when you first let anyone associated with these hearings know about it. And what you basically said is you reached out to your representative in the United States Congress, hoping that person would inform the White House before Judge Kavanaugh had been named. That's extremely persuasive about your motivation for coming forward. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your courage, and I want to tell you I believe you. I believe you. And I believe many Americans across this country believe you. And what I find striking about your testimony is you remember key, searing details of what happened to you. You told your husband and therapist, 2 of the most intimate of your confidants, and you told them years ago about this assault. You have shared your experience with multiple friends years after that and before these hearings ever started. I know, having personally prosecuted sexual assault cases and child sexual assault cases, that study after study shows trauma, shame, and the fear of consequences almost always cause survivors to, at the very least, delay reporting if they ever report at all. Police recognize that. Prosecutors recognize that. Medical and mental health professionals recognize that. The notes from your therapy sessions were created long before this nomination and corroborate what you have said today. You have passed a polygraph and submitted the results to this committee. Judge Kavanaugh has not. You have called for outside witnesses to testify and for expert witnesses to testify. Judge Kavanaugh has not. But most importantly, you have called for an independent FBI investigation into the facts. Judge Kavanaugh has not. And we owe you that. We owe the American people that. And let's talk about why this is so important. Contrary to what has been said today, the FBI does not reach conclusions. The FBI investigates. It interviews witnesses, gathers facts, and then presents that information to the United States Senate for our consideration and judgment. This committee knows that, in spite of what you've been told. In 1991, during a similar hearing, one of my Republican colleagues in this committee stated these claims were taken seriously by having the Federal Bureau of Investigations launch an inquiry to determine their validity. The FBI fulfilled its duty and issued a confidential report. Well, that could have and should have been done here. This morning, it was said that this could have been investigated confidentially back in July. But this also could have been investigated in the last 11 days since you came forward. Yet that has not happened. The FBI could have interviewed Mark Judge, Patrick Smith, Leland Kaiser, you, and Judge Kavanaugh on these issues. The FBI could have examined various maps that have been presented by the prosecutor who stands in for the United States Senators on this committee. The FBI could have gathered facts about the music or the conversation or any other details about the gathering that occurred that evening. That is standard procedure in a sexual assault case. In fact, the manual that was signed off by Ms. Mitchell, the manual that is posted on the Maricopa County Attorney's website as a guiding principle and best practices for what should happen with sexual assault cases, highlights the details of what should happen in terms of the need for an objective investigation into any sexual assault case. It says, quote, effective investigation requires cooperation with a multidisciplinary team that includes medical professionals, victim advocates, dedicated forensic interviewers, criminalists, and other law enforcement members. The manual also stresses the importance of obtaining outside witness information. You have bravely come forward. You have bravely come forward. And I want to thank you because you clearly have nothing to gain for what you have done. You have been a true patriot in fighting for the best of who we are as a country. I believe you are doing that because you love this country. And I believe history will show that you are a true profile in courage at this moment in time in the history of our country, and I thank you.
Senator Kennedy now, so proceed, Ms. Mitchell.
Dr. Ford, we're almost done. Just a couple cleanup questions. First of all, which of your two lawyers did Senator Feinstein's office recommend?
The Katz.
I'm sorry?
The Katz firm.
Okay. And when you did leave that night, did Leland Kaiser, now Kaiser, ever follow up with you and say, hey, what happened to you?
I've had communications with her recently.
Mm-hmm. I'm talking about like the next day.
Oh, no. She didn't know about the event. She was downstairs during the event, and I did not share it with her.
Okay. Are you aware that the three people at the party besides yourself and Brett Kavanaugh have given statements under penalty of felony to the committee?
Yes.
And are you aware of what those statements say?
Yes.
Are you aware that they say that they have no memory or knowledge of such a party?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any particular motives to ascribe to Leland?
I guess we could take those one at a time. Leland has significant health challenges, and I'm happy that she's focusing on herself and getting the health treatment that she needs. And she let me know that she needed her lawyer to take care of this for her, and she texted me right afterward with an apology and good wishes and etc. So I'm glad that she's taking care of herself. I don't expect that PJ and Leland would remember this evening. It was a very unremarkable party. It was not one of their more notorious parties because nothing remarkable happened to them that evening. They were downstairs. And Mr. Judge is a different story. I would expect that he would remember that this happened.
Understood. Senator Harris just questioned you from the Maricopa County Protocol on Sexual Assault. That's the paper she was holding up. Are you aware that, and you know, I've been really impressed today because you've talked about norepinephrine and cortisol and what we call in the profession basically the neurobiological effects of trauma. Have you also educated yourself on the best way to get to memory and truth in terms of interviewing victims of trauma?
For me, interviewing victims of trauma?
No, the best way to do it, the best practices for interviewing victims of trauma.
No.
Okay. Would you believe me if I told you that there's no study that says that this setting in 5-minute increments is the best way to do that?
We'll stipulate for
We
that.
can stipulate.
Thank you, counsel.
Agreed.
Did you know that the best way to do it is to have a trained interviewer talk to you one-on-one in a private setting and to let you do the talking, just let you do a narrative? Did you know that?
That makes a lot of sense.
Does make a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yes.
And then to follow up, obviously to fill in the details and ask for clarification. Does that make sense as well?
Yes.
And the research is done by a lot of people in the child abuse field. Two of the more prominent ones in the sexual assault field are Giesel and Fisher, who've talked about it. And it's called a cognitive interview. This is not a cognitive interview. Did anybody ever advise you from Senator Feinstein's office or from Representative Eshu's office to go get a forensic interview?
No.
Instead, you were advised to get an attorney and take a polygraph. Is that right?
Many people advised me to get an attorney. Once I had an attorney, my attorney and I discussed using the polygraph.
And instead of submitting to an interview in California, we're having a hearing here today in 5-minute increments. Is that right?
I agree that's what was agreed upon by the collegial group here.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, I have something to submit for the record. We received 3 statements under penalty of felony from 3 witnesses identified by Dr. Ford, Mark Judge, Leland Kaiser, and Patrick Smith. All 3 denied any knowledge of the incident or gathering described by Dr. Ford. Without objection, I'll enter in the record.
Mr. Chairman, I have something for the record as well. A number of letters from the witness's family, friends, including her husband.
Okay. I'll get to you just as soon as the ranking member.
Mr. Chairman, I have 3 letters addressed to both you and the ranking member, and I'd ask that they be entered into the record.
Without objection.
And it's also my understanding that Mr. Judge is not willing to come forward to answer our questions. As a result, we cannot test his memory or make any assessment of his thoughtfulness or character. And I think that's why the failure to call him to testify is so very critical. And I hope the majority would reconsider that.
Okay. Senator Blumenthal.
Mr. Chairman, I ask if you have sworn statements that you're submitting for the record, that we have those individuals come before us so that we can ask them questions about those statements. I think that the nature of this proceeding would be compromised if we lack an opportunity to ask them questions about sworn statements that will be part of the record. So, frankly, Mr. Chairman, I would object to entering them in the record.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Senator Whitehouse.
I have a number of letters that I would like to ask submitted to the record that relate to the importance of proper investigation by trained professionals in pulling these kind of investigations together, from the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, the National Women's Law Center, the National Organization for Women, and so forth.
Without objection, order, Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for our chairman. The statements that Senator Blumenthal talked about, those were statements taken by our majority staff.
They're already in the record.
Yes, sir, but those statements were taken by our majority staff?
Yes.
Did minority staff participate?
No.
Why not?
you'll have to ask them.
Well, were they instructed not to participate?
No.
They chose not to?
That's right.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
And if I could, I still think I have the floor, Mr. Chairman.
Let's listen to Senator Feinstein.
Can we be excused?
I am
The witness is quite tired.
I'd like to, if you'd wait just a minute, I'd like to thank Dr. Ford.
All right.
In fact, we're going to continue this meeting, and we can, so let's just be nice to her. Dr. Ford, I can only speak as one of 21 senators here, but I thank you very much for your testimony. More importantly, for your bravery coming out and trying to answer our questions as best you could remember. Thank you very much. We'll adjourn for 45 minutes. Or not adjourn, recess for 45 minutes.
Okay, so there it is, 45-minute break called by Chairman Chuck Grassley now as we continue to watch the Kavanaugh hearings, which have been going since 10 o'clock this morning, are expected to go all day. You are watching CBS News continuing coverage of the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings, now in their 5th hour. College professor Christine Blasey Ford swore under oath that Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her when they were teenagers. The committee will hear from him later today. Joining me in our coverage are CBS This Morning co-host Gayle King and John Dickerson. Also, CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman and Jen Crawford, who covers the Supreme Court. CBS This Morning co-host Norah O'Donnell is on Capitol Hill as well, and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is just outside that hearing room. Ricky, to you first. What's changed in the last hour and a half?
I think that the last bit of examination by Rachel Miller, the hired prosecutor on Rachel Mitchell, excuse me, on behalf of the Republicans, was powerful in raising a possible doubt about the witness's testimony. If she had gotten to that a lot sooner, she could have developed it. And what she was really basically trying to say is that it's all about memory, and that if you perhaps had gone to a forensic examiner and done it the right way, that perhaps you would have remembered it correctly and a person would not have been Brett Kavanaugh. But that may have been way too little, way too late.
In other words, she was saying that if a proper forensic, the way she prefers to do it, Rachel Mitchell that is, after a trauma, if it was done that way as opposed to the polygraph test, possibly she could have remembered even more.
Well, she could have remembered even more. Perhaps she could have remembered it differently. The one thing it doesn't shake is this. You have a woman who says that she's 100% sure it was Brett Kavanaugh. Yeah. She knew Brett Kavanaugh. It's not like she picked a stranger out of a lineup of someone she had never met. So it's very, very difficult to be in the position of the prosecutor to try to undermine the credibility. So you're back to where Jan was, which was really, if you're not undermining credibility and showing that she's lying, or really that she's mistaken, I think lying is way off the table. She's not lying. That she's mistaken. That really, do you have another goal, which is the political goal that has to do with the timing, that may be something that would be used by the politicians after this.
But Ricky, help me understand, how are you supposed to remember something differently if you know the person who assaulted you?
Well, that's what I say.
Yeah, I don't understand what she's getting at.
What she's getting at is that sometimes we imprint a memory in a way that we remember the memory and not the fact. The problem is this, she knew him. Yeah.
Quickly to both of you, apologies, but John Cornyn is speaking right now. Let's listen, because we're just hearing from some of the senators for the first time.
Okay.
That wasn't conveyed to her. Obviously, this is a tough setting for any witness, but I thought it went as well as you could expect. It's essentially, I think, what we heard is an articulation of what we already saw in her letter.
Senator, you handle the vote counts around here. Based on what was said this morning by her, you have any sense yet of whether you have what you need?
I think we need to hear from the judge. His reputation is on the line, his career as well. This needs to be a fair process to both Dr. Ford and to Judge Kavanaugh.
Did any of you have it? Did any of you have?
Did you personally find her to be credible?
I found no reason to find her not credible. There are obviously gaps in her story. Obviously, we know people who are traumatized can have those sort of gaps. But again, I regret that she finds herself in this circus-like setting because her letter to Senator Feinstein was released to the press against her knowledge and without her authorization, and that she wasn't told by her lawyers that she could have been interviewed in a private setting by investigators on both sides and get her testimony that way. But I thought she did just fine.
Are you pleased with Rachel Mitchell's questioning
I think she did exactly what I hoped she would do, and that is, in a dignified and professional way, ask questions to get information. I would say most of the comments made by our friends across the aisle struck me as more political. They didn't really ask questions, seeking information. We obviously are interested in getting to the truth here, and unfortunately, this is a hyper-politicized environment, no doubt about it.
Senator, it seemed towards the end.
Graham has a few
well,
things
Senator Graham, then I'll ask you. She seemed towards the end, Ms. Mitchell, to be questioning the political motives of Dr. Ford's attorneys by raising questions about how things were paid for and how she was put in touch with them.
I'm really upset that they knew about this in August and never told anybody. I'm really upset if Dianne Feinstein believed this was a credible allegation, that you wouldn't do Mr. Judge Kavanaugh the service of saying, I've got this, what's your side of the story? Turn it over to the committee so we could have something not this close to the midterms. When they say that she wasn't sure we were willing to go out there, that's a bunch of bull. I don't know what they told Ms. Ford, but we were willing to go to California. We were told she couldn't fly. All I can say is that we're 40-something days away from the election, and their goal, not Ms. Ford's goal, is to delay this past the midterms so they can win the Senate and never allow Trump to fill the seat. I believe that now more than ever. I don't know who paid for a polygraph, but somebody did, and here's what I'm more convinced of. The friends on the other side set it up to be just the way it is. Senator, I feel ambushed as the majority. We're going to hear from Mr. Kavanaugh, Judge Kavanaugh, and I've been a judge, a prosecutor, and a defense attorney, and here's what I'll tell you. When it comes to where it happened, I still don't know. I don't know when it happened. She said she's 100% certain it did happen. I bet you Judge Kavanaugh will say, I'm 100% sure I didn't do it. The people named say they don't know what Ms. Ford's talking about. She can't tell us how she got home and how she got there. And that's the facts I'm left with. A nice lady who has come forward to tell a hard story that's uncorroborated, and this is enough. God help anybody else that gets nominated. Based on what I heard today, you could not get a search warrant or an arrest warrant because you don't know the location, you don't know the time, and you don't have any corroboration. As to Ms. Mitchell, that's what I hoped she would do. I heard a bunch of speeches from a bunch of politicians who have politicized this from day one, who've been lying in wait for a political purpose, not Ms. Ford, but certainly them, making a bunch of speeches, and Ms. Mitchell methodically went through the facts of what happened that day, leading up to that day, and how we find ourselves here. So from my point of view, I'm pleased with what I saw.
You still want to vote on Friday?
Senator, given what you laid out about your own background as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, as a judge, did you, sitting up there, find Dr. Ford to be credible?
I didn't find her allegations to be corroborated against Mr. Kavanaugh. I don't doubt something happened to her, but she is saying it's Brett Kavanaugh, but she can't tell me the house, she can't tell me the city, she can't tell me the month of the year. He's saying I didn't do it. So here's what you do. When you have an emotional accusation and an emotional denial, use the rule of law. The presumption of innocence attaches to the person accused. You have to give them notice in times of time and location. You ask, is there anybody to verify this? And when you give names, all of them go the other way. Having said that, what I think about Ms. Ford, very competent, accomplished lady. Something happened, I don't know what, but you're asking me to say it was Brett Kavanaugh. And I don't know when it happened, where it happened. He said it didn't happen. But I would say this. I thought it was a good suggestion for her to go talk to somebody to work through this. That's actually.
Do you still want to vote on Friday?
How is that not all an argument for a more fulsome investigation?
If you really believe we needed an investigation of this, why didn't you tell us in August?
But why not do
So
it
this
now?
is now listen. The FBI is going to tell us what? What house are they going to go to? What city are they going to go to? Who are they going to talk to? Because they can't tell us the month, barely the year. So this is all delay.
Could Mr. Judge tell you that? Could Mr. Judge tell you that?
So here's where they're going, Mr. Judge. He says, I didn't do it. I don't know what she's talking about. They want to bring him in, trash him out, and call 25 people. Well, they say that he's an abuser, and guess what? We'll be past the midterm. I'm not going to reward people for playing a political game. I think with her life, she is just as much a victim of this as I think Brett Kavanaugh, because somebody betrayed her trust. And we know who she gave the letter to. And the people that betrayed her trust, they owe her an apology.
Do you still want to vote on Friday?
Yeah.
You still want to vote on Friday?
Yeah.
All right. Jeff, I don't know if you can still, if you hear me. But obviously a juiced-up Senator Graham there, who clearly is upset about what transpired, believes there's holes in her argument. And he isn't the only Republican who said that. I spoke with another member of the committee earlier during one of the breaks who said privately, because he didn't want to sort of flash all his cards, that they are concerned about this hole about how is it she doesn't remember? She doesn't know how she got home that night. How is it that she was afraid to fly but somehow ends up here in Washington? Her team won't tell us how she got here, and then, of course, she points out during her testimony that she had flown a few times to the East Coast. So definitely holes in her argument, but Republicans agree. She came across as likable, she came across as credible, and they expect the judge to hopefully do that as well this afternoon.
All right, Ed, thanks very much. Great job with those questions, and thank you for speaking to both of them. So, Senator Lindsey Graham with the second and by far strongest reaction so far to what we saw this morning and early this afternoon. Senator Graham saying he felt ambushed and going after not Christine Blasey Ford, but the Democrats, and saying that this was politically motivated, the way it was orchestrated, the timing, all meant to delay the process so that it would be pushed past the midterms or potentially even far beyond that. So some fiery language there from Senator Lindsey Graham. He did not answer the question of whether he is still calling for a vote tomorrow, which would then potentially lead to a final vote and potentially confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh early next week if that were to happen. But we have yet to hear from Judge Kavanaugh. That's going to take place this afternoon after Christine Blasey Ford's testimony just wrapped up. We dealt with 3 sessions there where Democratic senators all had a chance to ask questions, and pretty much every Republican deferred to the special prosecutor, Rachel Mitchell, who took Christine Blasey Ford through a timeline of what she says happened back in the early 80s, and then also question what has happened here in just the past few months. Nora's on Capitol Hill. She's been watching this all morning and afternoon as well. And Nora, actually, do we have Dick Durbin right now we're looking at? Let's listen to that.
She was terrified, but I thought she handled the questions professionally and honestly, volunteered answers when she didn't have to. I thought she made a very credible presentation.
Do you think it backfired on the Republicans to have an outside counsel or staff counsel do the questioning instead of themselves?
Well, if you listen to the prosecutor's conclusion that doing an interview in 5-minute segments is not recommended, you can tell that she too was frustrated. I couldn't follow her line of thinking. I tried to understand where she was coming from. It seemed so oblique and so fragmented. I never quite understood what she was trying to say.
Having heard, how would you feel about Christine Blasey?
The thing we need to hear the most is what is very obvious. If there is no evidence and there are no witnesses to back up what she just told us under oath, why aren't you supporting an investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation? Wouldn't you want to clear your name and make sure that the court didn't have a person, a justice, who came in under a shadow of suspicion?
Okay, Dick Durbin's reaction to what he has heard today. He talked a little bit about the prosecutor, Rachel Mitchell, who was picked by Republicans. And what was interesting to hear at the end there, at least, was that Rachel Mitchell, in the end of her questioning of Christine Blasey Ford, the prosecutor picked by Republicans was essentially undercutting the strategy then picked by Republicans and saying, there's not a lot I can do in 5-minute segments when I'm then interrupted, and there's not a whole lot of places to go. As she finished up her questioning of Christine Blasey Ford, and the challenge that she faced in trying to get information here.
I don't envy her position, and she had two duties. One was to try to undermine the credibility of Dr. Ford in one way or another, whether it was to her memory or to, in fact, that whether or not she was telling the truth. And the second one was to carry out the political agenda of the Republicans who hired her, which clearly she did much of her examination dealing with the timing of the letters, the conversations with the representative and then with Senator Feinstein, and then her getting a lawyer and then the polygraph. And so what she is trying to do is give the Republicans cover for those who really would like to say this is all a Democratic problem.
Did she do that? Did she do that? It was interesting to hear Senator Durbin say, I had a hard time following her line of questioning.
Well,
following Rachel Mitchell.
Yes, it was very difficult to
yes.
follow Rachel Mitchell because of the 5-minute intervals. I mean, we saw it in the very first segment when she was trying to deal with 3 issues that needed editing in a document or corrections in a document. She couldn't even get to the third one.
Yeah. But I think when you think about kind of watching what Senator Graham had to say in his reaction to that, I think is a way of thinking about how she did conduct these questions, because she did raise and point to some real holes in the testimony that we haven't seen before. She raised inconsistencies about the specific year. Remember, it started out being sometime in the 80s, and then it was the early 80s, and then it became maybe 1982, 1983, and now all of a sudden it's 1982. So,
but they say that's common, though, with trauma victims. You
especially
may not remember the year, but you certainly remember.
This started out in her, starting out from her testimony today, but then going back to even what she told the Washington Post. So that wasn't that long ago. So they were able to point to she was able to point to some inconsistencies in her story that she's even told recently. And how many people were at the party? The Washington Post reported this, but then she said this to the therapist, and then she said this now. All of that, all of those inconsistencies that may not add up to much, and there is no real aha moment, but all of that then allows what we saw and the reaction from what you're going to see from Republicans, which is the facts. After this hearing, there is still no corroboration. There is still no contemporaneous evidence. It is still credibility, as Nora's been talking about. It was he said, she said. This is a question of credibility. People believe that she came across as credible, but now it's all on Judge Kavanaugh.
In other words, there's room on both sides to make the argument that we support this person or we support this person or this is why we're voting.
But for the small number of people who have to make the ultimate decision here, who are on the fence, they have to decide, was Dr. Ford credible enough not to elevate Kavanaugh? It's the question of whether she was or wasn't credible, and if she was not credible enough and he deserves to be elevated to the Supreme Court, what was it about her that was not credible? That has to be weighed against what was witnessed today, which even the Republican senators were saying she seemed credible. I was struck that Senator Cornyn said that the gaps were proof of the trauma. I mean, in other words, saying he saw some gaps in her story, but then he quickly said right after that, that's proof of the trauma, as if to it wasn't his intent, but to underscore this and explain this.
I can't imagine anyone watching that saying that she was evasive in any way.
No,
she answered the questions that were asked. Now, as we move to the afternoon, Jan, the question is, what are we going to hear from Brett Kavanaugh?
Right, and I think, again, I mean, because now we really got no new information, no new facts. We saw some inconsistencies. It's now the pressure is on Kavanaugh to come across as credible and believable and answer these questions as openly and honestly and forthrightly, I should say, as he can. And so you're going to see him present a defense that this was not me. And I think that it's going to be a pretty impassioned one, because this is not about, we were talking earlier, just the Supreme Court and a seat on the Supreme Court for life. This is about his life and a reputation that he's built. And so you're going to see him make that opening statement, and then it's the questions.
But were
And
there
the
any
Democrats,
inconsistencies enough, Jan, to doubt her story?
Well, what we're going to see from Kavanaugh, though, you will see the Democrats try to impugn that character, everything, that name, that integrity, that he's going to say, this is at odds with the way I've lived my whole life. So it's going to be his life open for examination this afternoon.
Nora O'Donnell is standing by.
How combative do you expect that to be, Jen?
I think it could be quite combative, but Ricky has said earlier, and I agree with this, that based on the tone of the hearing so far and the way Republicans are interpreting it, like we're trying to be fair, we're being the grown-ups, Democrats are playing politics. If Democrats continue to look like they're really playing politics, that in some ways could actually help Kavanaugh and the Republicans who are going to try to make the argument for him.
You can't imagine Democrats want to do anything to make themselves the story after the testimony from Dr. Ford, who it seems there's agreement was a credible witness. I mean, that if purely political motives, they would want her to be the face of this, not themselves. But they might get in their own way.
So we hear, here's the other question, Ricky, that's, I think, worth asking. So Rachel Mitchell handled the questions for Republican senators for Christine Blasey Ford. How does she then play into the Kavanaugh questions?
Well, the Kavanaugh is her witness, assuming that she is, in fact, going to ask the questions for all of the Republican senators. And so there is a part of Rachel Mitchell that you could watch when she would attempt to be friendly and comforting and be there with you and act almost as if she were the advocate for Dr. Ford to make her feel secure. Well, that's exactly what she has to do with Brett Kavanaugh. She has to be his partner in this. And Brett Kavanaugh has got to show his humanity. We're used to looking at someone's confirmation hearing of whether or not they have the fitness to be in a life-tenured appointment to the United States Supreme Court, which is making the law, interpreting the law for the entire country, which could for him be 30, 40 years. So is he fit? So she has to show him to be fit. And it's a contradiction because you have to be factual and you have to be calm. At the same time, your life and your family's life has been upended, and we need to see your pain.
And I think the challenge for Kavanaugh is, yes, he's a lawyer, and one of the senators made the point that, you know, he's used to being up in the Senate, but he's not like a trial lawyer. He's not this polished guy. He's not someone who goes on television a lot. He has been very much, he's an intellectual. He's been a judge. He's cloistered away in that ivory tower. You know, he's a law professor. So this is not a natural form for him by any means.
But it's a more natural form for him than it was for her, for sure.
Not necessarily.
I mean, he has gone through some hearings already, right?
But
never hearings in which...
Yeah, I mean,
not necessarily.
You're also dealing with the fact that Brett Kavanaugh is going to have to face cross-examination from the Democrats.
And how do you think they should play this?
Well, I think that they need to be firm. And I think that they need to do what they are going to do, which is to go back particularly into that Fox News interview statements. It was so ill-advised because he made broad statements about the type of life that he led, which then allowed people from Yale to come forward and say he wasn't like that.
He opened a door that he probably didn't want to open. Nora O'Donnell is still standing by on the Hill. Nora?
Yeah, I've been talking to officials close to Kavanaugh because he's the person who's going to be testifying next, and I'm told that he is going to come back much more forcefully than he has in the past, calling this a grotesque and obvious character assassination. I'm told Judge Kavanaugh did watch most of this testimony, completely denies that he was at that house, that he sexually assaulted Dr. Ford. I think you got a sense from listening to Senator Lindsey Graham that Republicans are ready to wage war and really start to burrow into some of those what they believe are credibility gaps. Now, some people don't think those are credibility gaps. Republicans clearly do. They're going to bring up what they believe are 5 different accounts of how many different people were at that party. And as one official said to me, they're going to poke more holes in her credibility. On the same time, I have also spoken with a White House official who admitted that it was very compelling compelling testimony that she gave there. I'm told that the president did watch most of Dr. Ford's testimony, not all of it because he was in New York for the UN meeting, so he missed about the first hour of it as he was coming and traveling, back down to Washington, but did watch some of that testimony. But I think we just to set up what we're about to watch is going to be incredibly compelling. Because as you all watched this morning along with me, Dr. Ford said that she is 100% sure that it was Brett Kavanaugh who sexually assaulted her, specifically describing the neurobiological reasons why she remembers that so clearly. You are now, according to people that I have spoken with, Judge Kavanaugh is going to call this character assassination, along with some of the other allegations that have been made. He believes that he is not only defending his credibility, but also his reputation and his character, which is what this has largely been about, credibility and character. Now, we heard Lindsey Graham, and I think you're going to see Lindsey Graham and some of the other Republican senators push back hard, but I think the two people really to watch for on the Republican side, for instance, are Senator Ben Sasse, a Republican from Nebraska, who, according to reports inside the room, was one of the few Republican senators who specifically went over to Dr. Ford, shook her hand, said thank you for being here, specifically addressed her in person. He has been critical of President Trump on a number of issues.
This is a test of the emergency alert system.
This is a required monthly test of the emergency alert system. Had this been an actual emergency or dangerous situation, official messages and directions would have followed the alert tones. This test is brought to you by the Florida Division of Emergency Management, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and your local broadcast station or cable provider. This concludes the required monthly test.
This and wrote it all out by hand. And he said, he described to me, I talked to him about this in an interview I did with him about 10 years ago, still very raw. He said he couldn't sleep, he couldn't decide how to say it, he couldn't decide how to craft a statement, and he got up early in the morning, made a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and the words just came out. And all you've got to do is go back and look at that testimony. It is white-hot testimony. It is like fire. He did not do this. This is a travesty. His whole life, his reputation, everything that he had worked to build has been taken away from him by these senators. He talks about in the interview how he really felt it was an issue of race, which I think is obviously a very big distinction here. But when some of the senators were questioning, like Howell Heflin from Alabama, he felt like he was almost like being a plantation owner, talking down to him and putting him through this.
Lynching at the time, which is
very high-tech.
High-tech lynching, which is a very, very volatile word. But I'm curious, Ricky, is this the ultimate he said, she said? Now, she says she's 100% sure that it's him. He says not only is it not me, I wasn't even there.
Well, yes, it's a he said, she said. But
how do you determine who's telling the truth here?
How do we do it in a court of law? And here it's different because this isn't in a court of law. And after all, we're only looking ultimately for the final vote of a few senators, because we believe that the senators, no matter what, are going to vote along party lines with the exception of a few, though I could be surprised, I suppose. But whenever there are witnesses at trial who both seem to have an aura of credibility, and you have to make a choice, you have to decide what it is that makes you think that this one is telling the truth. In Dr. Ford's testimony, what we do know is that in addition to passing a polygraph, and yes, I know some people would call it junk science, but I'll tell you, in my own practice, when I used to have defendants who had been accused of sexual assault, and I would ask them if they would take a confidential polygraph for me, and not to worry that they're mostly inconclusive and not to fear anything about it. If they told me they wouldn't, that was all I had to hear. there. I didn't need to represent those people. If the ones, and probably about 80% of them said that they would take it. So the polygraph does have value to me and may to other people. In addition, she has told other people about Brett Kavanaugh, although she's told them in more recent times. And the fact that she doesn't remember certain things and that it does change a bit here and there as to numbers and places, that ultimately, that those kind of inconvenient truths, that makes her more credible to many people.
But this feels different, too, to me, because normally, in many cases, they'll say, well, he said, she said, consensual or not consensual.
Correct.
This is a case where he's saying, not only did I not do it, though, Ricky, but I wasn't even there.
Right.
Well, that's the issue. You have such a stark divide here.
Yes, yes.
And that he hasn't given himself a lot of room in terms of the initial denials of what happened or didn't happen.
Well, he's not calling her a liar. He's saying that she has somehow been sexually assaulted by someone, or at least that's what he has said on Fox News, and that she has undergone a trauma, but it was not him.
Which is part of why, again, as you mentioned before, Rachel Mitchell didn't get into details of what happened inside that bedroom because of what he said before and what she anticipates.
Right.
I think that he'll say this afternoon as we move through this afternoon. Jan, what are the biggest questions you have about the next few hours?
How the Democrats are going to, well, first of all, we'll start because we'll hear from Kavanaugh first. So his statement, his demeanor, and certainly I would not expect him, for those of you who watched his interview, I think most people have seen at least excerpts of it on Fox News, where he seemed, he was too measured, and he didn't have any indignation. There was no anger. I mean, he's been accused, and none of this came up yet, but some of the allegations that have been leveled against him have been pretty extraordinary, including gang rape and being at parties where multiple young high school girls were being raped over weekends in Bethesda, which, you know, on its face, you would expect if someone has been accused of that to go, are you kidding me? I mean, seriously? And so we didn't kind of see that in that Fox News interview. I would expect to see some of that anger and indignation when he's giving his opening statement. And then I would also want to be very curious to see how the Democrats not only go after him on his personal behavior and drinking, but whether they try to raise any of these other outside allegations. My guess is they won't. They want this to be, they don't want to hear about Michael Avenatti and these allegations. This is all about Ford, who they believe, based on what we've been hearing from the report, that did very well. So keep the focus on her.
The political question will be, who sets the terms of the debate after this is over? Does it become, do you believe Dr. Ford or not? And if that's the case, that's not great for Brett Kavanaugh. If it becomes, do you believe Brett Kavanaugh, and he gives the kind of strong defense of himself that Jan's talking about, what he needs to provide is a compelling defense of the person's vote, of a senator's vote. They need to be able to say, I elevated him because of X. And if they can say, because I found him credible, that helps those Republicans who are going to need to vote for him.
Does it ever become in any way, Ricky, I believe them both?
Well, you could believe in both in an odd way. You could believe that she believes she is telling the truth. She firmly believes she is telling the truth.
Which is why she could pass a lie detector.
Right, and that he firmly believes he is telling the truth. But then that leads you down another path, which is, what was his behavior like at this time in his life with other people? Was this just simply a night he doesn't remember? So that may not necessarily help him.
We're expecting to see Judge Kavanaugh here in just the next 2 or 3 minutes, but before we go back there and go to the camera that's going to show him, I want to go to Ed O'Keefe's camera. He has some more information from just outside that hearing room. Ed?
Hey, Jeff. Yes, I know you guys have been discussing Prosecutor Mitchell there and her role in all of this. It's going to change slightly once Judge Kavanaugh enters the room, I'm told, by a member of the committee. She's going to ask about 20 minutes worth of questions at the beginning, but we will eventually hear from at least some of the Republican members of the Judiciary Committee when they are called upon to question the judge. There's also been some questions asked about whether this was worth it. Was she an effective inquisitor? Was this the smartest move Republicans could make? I checked with some senior aides here who work for Republicans, and in the words of one of them, what was the alternative? remember, the optics of 11 men quizzing this woman was such that they were so concerned about it, they went out and found Rachel Mitchell to come do this. But they say, look, ultimately she was trying to establish a fact pattern, and she did that to the best of her ability. Behind us here, just down the hall, is where Judge Kavanaugh is actually currently waiting. And he will walk down the hallway here back into the hearing room, Dirksen 226, to sit down and begin his testimony. Here in Dirksen this afternoon, it's really just been cops and reporters. They're not really allowing any of the general public near this hearing room. That's mostly in deference to Dr. Ford and a hope that this would be a somewhat more discreet and respectful exchange. But as Jan and others have pointed out, we should expect that the Democrats, at least, will go after him pretty quickly. I suspect by the time we get to Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, who is a more senior member of the Senate, but a partisan warrior nonetheless, and the second-ranking Democrat, that it's at that point the Democrats really will begin to dig into Kavanaugh, his personal life, and whether or not any of that speaks to his credibility. We asked some of the more junior Democrats on the committee earlier, are you going to do that? And why would you go into his sex life? Why would you bring up his drinking? And they said, look, it all speaks to his credibility, which is now in question as this exchange continues.
Well, that Democratic questioning is going to be very interesting to watch. Will also be interesting to watch, Ed, to your point, you think there will be some Republican questioning. To what extent John, Jeff Flake, and Ben Sasse potentially speak, since they are members of the committee there, and potential swing votes on all of this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what we then learn from the questions that they ask, because in the questions they ask, they will be laying the predicate for what their final decision will be on this nomination. And they will be able to say, I asked these questions because I sought an answer to this thing, I got the answer I wanted, and that led me to this vote. For them, as politicians, this is a moment to begin a narrative to explain their vote one way or the other. And so if they do get a chance to question, and that's why there could have been some benefit to having Republicans ask the questions, because in asking the question, you can frame the shape of the debate. And this is a political debate, as we've all been saying, it's not a courtroom. And the ability to frame and shape the question can sometimes determine what the politics end up being in the end.
We're not inside a courtroom. We're not inside a government building. We're inside the court of public opinion here.
Which is also why, in certain ways, I understand that the optics were terrible to have 11 white men going after Dr. Ford. But at the same time, there was an ability also, if they had, to be able to have treated her with dignity in the way that Senator Grassley did in his opening statement, and they might have fared better for that.
Do you think that, you said in the beginning, Ricky, that it was very hard for Rachel Mitchell to get a real dialogue going. Do you think she was effective despite the handicap that she had?
I don't think that she was effective, but I also don't think it's necessarily her fault.
The question was whether anyone could have been effective under those terms.
Right.
Precisely, and back to Jan's point, whether she was or wasn't effective won't be the thing that helps Brett Kavanaugh. What will be what helps him is whether he comes and Republican senators are able to say, I found him credible.
Right.
And I cannot, I just cannot believe there's a Republican on that committee that is thinking, dang it, I wished I'd had my chance to sit down and ask her all these questions. I could have really cross-examined her. I could have put her on the fire. No one would. That was fraught with peril.
It was.
And in this, particularly in this climate, you know, what they were able to do in 1991, you know, when Arlen Specter was really giving it, you know, to Anita Hill, is not what they're doing in 2018. And this may not have been a great morning for Brett Kavanaugh, and there wasn't the kind of cross that people had hoped for, but for the Republicans, I would be stunned if any of them thought, I wish I could have done that. I could have really put it to her.
Well, and they could have also had the opportunity that you said, Ricky, to show some grace, to show some compassion, and still make their points.
But then they have
done
But they have the constituents who are saying, and there are a lot of people who believe him,
right.
and they think he's been unfairly accused. He's this wonderful man, and look what Democrats are doing to him. Those are their constituents. So.
And that's a really great point. Those constituents would say, wait a minute, if they took the softer, why didn't you really go after her?
And you messed up. It's your fault that, you know, you didn't defend this fine man enough. So it's not a
great point.
Right. Well, and you also have now the ability of whichever Republicans are going to use their own time, in addition to dealing with Flake and Sasse, is they, of course, have the ability to do exactly what the Democrats have just done with Dr. Ford, which is to build up the person that Brett Kavanaugh is and his credibility, which was something that the Democrats did very well with Dr. Ford.
Regardless, we're expecting here this afternoon a dramatically different tone from what we saw this morning. And that's basically the tale of 2 days, presumably this afternoon. And as we wait for Brett Kavanaugh to walk in to that Senate hearing room, we will get an opening statement from Brett Kavanaugh as well. They've said they've given an unlimited time. He's released what he's going to say already, as did Christine Blasey Ford in the meantime. And then we will have the same questioning, if not the same tone, the same times for questioning from Democratic senators and Republican senators on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and that is 5 minutes apiece. However much Republicans then yield their time to the prosecutor, Rachel Mitchell. The guidance from Ed O'Keefe, who's just outside the hearing room there, is that they'll give Rachel Mitchell about 20 minutes to question. So is that the right way to think about it, Ricky, that Rachel Mitchell will be questioning Brett Kavanaugh?
Yes, she's going to question him, but you're still back to this crazy 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. At least I assume you are, because it goes every other one. Yeah. So, no, she's not interrogating. She's propping him up.
But, you know, she could, depending on what her role is, she could, in an odd way, play the role that the Democrats were playing this morning, so that when, there's aggressive questioning or gentle questioning, the Democrats were able to step in and rehabilitate or vouch for as character witnesses. She could play that role. I don't know.
Possible. But also you have this. It's the whole question of timing. It's just like in a court of law when I'm on a roll and somebody interrupts me with an objection and it, would throw me, or at least I couldn't get back so quickly on that roll. So here, she may be in a position, Rachel Mitchell, to be able to interrupt the Democrats' flow. If the Democrats have any continuity, if they've thought about how they're going to build upon each other, they may not. They may be all in their insular little worlds.
And also give him a way of almost like playing cleanup. Like if something's going, she could say, but wait, now don't you mean this? And you have a witness that said that, and so whatever pressure points there are.
And she's experienced at that because prosecutors do a lot of redirect examinations.
As a political matter, it seemed to me the the Democratic game plan was really easy to identify. They praised Ford for being heroic, and they made a lot of the FBI investigation not taking place. In an effort to say, you may find gaps in her story, they could have been solved by an FBI investigation. Each of them kind of stayed on those 2 points throughout their 5-minute allotted time. It'll be interesting to see what Republicans, when we're all through with the Republican questioning of Kavanaugh, what the two things we could come down to. Because at the end of the day, when this is debated, it's basically you got about 2 points you can make in the political debate that's going to take place around this. And then what will that be for Republicans?
Is there any doubt in your mind that the vote will happen tomorrow? It was interesting when he was asked the question twice. Well, he clearly ignored the question.
Lindsey Graham, you're talking about.
Yes. Can he still be on track to actually vote tomorrow?
Yes.
I mean, that's where they haven't said anything otherwise at this point. We are just learning now that Brett Kavanaugh's family is inside the hearing room now as we wait for him to arrive in the second dramatic part of this historic day on Capitol Hill, as we've already heard from Christine Blasey Ford, Brett Kavanaugh's accuser, and now we wait to hear from Kavanaugh himself. Ricky, if you're a senator on either side right now, or if you're one of these Republican senators, let's say, first, who wants to ask a question and not yield that time to Rachel Mitchell, what are you asking?
Well, I think you're asking questions about his character. You're asking him about how he's lived his life, or you're asking him about the trauma that he and his family have been put through and what has happened to his reputation, which, for all intents and purposes, seems to have been very, very good in the court, the powerful court on which he served, and that you want to remind people of that, and that Dr. Ford is not the only one who suffered, that the Kavanaughs are suffering.
And if I could, this reminds me, there is a moment in the hearing for Justice Sam Alito, who is replacing a key swing vote as well. And it turned the entire hearing when he got friendly questioning from Lindsey Graham about how and Lindsey Graham was saying, you're not a bad person. You've never had allegations like this against you. And Justice Alito said no. And his wife started crying and ran out of the room. And at that moment, the hearing room completely changed, and Sam Alito was headed for the Supreme Court. So that will be something, that kind of moment, too.
And having his family there, I do think, is very important. I think that what has happened to him in the public eye has also happened to his family. And that, I think that the senators, we don't know about the camera, but the senators are also going to be aware of how Mrs. Kavanaugh reacts during this hearing.
Well, you made this point, Jen. This is no longer just a job interview.
Right.
That's right. And Republicans will want to reframe it from being a job interview to get a promotion into, if you don't vote for Judge Kavanaugh, it will be a permanent verdict on his character, for his life, and for the life of his family and children. And that's what you're choosing to do if you don't choose to elevate him, raising the emotional stakes for Republican senators.
And that's where you're going to hear with no corroboration, no contemporaneous evidence, multiple inconsistencies in the story that we heard. So, and this is all cooked up by Democrats because they sat on the allegation for 2 months.
But they said on the allegation at her request, though. Does that matter?
Well, what they were going to say, and what I think we're already starting to hear, is that they could have brought this forward, even had her name redacted, done it anonymously, so that it didn't have to even become public, and that Senator Feinstein and then the Representative Anna Eshoo could have come forward with that. So that's going to be part of their narrative, that we're already seeing them come out to say this.
Well, Dr. Ford has certainly made it clear throughout the morning that she never wanted this to be a public thing, that she came because this was her civic duty. So, and
she hoped he wouldn't get the nomination. She wanted it to be someone else entirely. That's why she came out when she did.
And she came out early enough before it made it to the short list. And she did it in a way that she didn't go to the media, that she did the civic thing about going. It's like what you learn as a little kid, that when you see something that's not working in your town, call your local congressman. And that's exactly what she did.
And the tip line.
And the encrypted tip line, where she really could remain with this feeling of safety, of confidentiality. I think Brett Kavanaugh is in a position here. I'm with Jan. I don't know if I were Brett Kavanaugh that I would have watched any of that, because I think that it would either infuriate me if I say I wasn't there, I didn't do this, this never happened, and it is an assassination on my character, or it might throw me off in terms of my emotional balance when I go in there.
I still think you have to know, Ricky, what the other person's saying about you.
Well, I think we knew what she was saying.
Yeah, but I would want to hear it.
And he'll likely be asked that, right?
Yes.
Of course.
Whether he was watching this?
Of course. And it's a better it's a
Yeah.
better answer for him to say he watched, and whatever his reaction may have been. It's a better answer than saying, no, I wasn't going to do this.
There's no compromise here. He's elevated. He's elevated to the Supreme Court, or he's not.
Right. And he will have the tag with him for the rest of his life, elevated or not.
And there are no winners here. Whether he's elevated or not, he doesn't win. She doesn't win. The Supreme Court.
The families don't win.
This entire process there are no winners.
So what could have made this a winning situation? Would the FBI investigation in the beginning have at least made this seem like a fair situation to people who were calling for it from the beginning? I said earlier today, she wanted an FBI investigation, and people that have something to hide are not saying, please come and investigate.
Well, the thing, when the committee became aware of the allegations only a couple weeks ago, there could have been then an FBI investigation where they went and interviewed the witnesses. The argument against that was that the Senate has the same kind of all these statements that they're taking with their investigators. It's in the Senate now. That's the forum for it. Those are punishable as a felony if you lie. So it's really no different. We're going to do it in the committee because the FBI investigation process has already ended and this had never come up by then.
But I think Senator Graham said we could have had an investigation within the last 11 days.
No question about it.
That's exactly right. Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. They could have done that in the Hill-Thomas when they reopened that. It's a matter of 3 days that it took them. So, but that wouldn't have answered anything. Is my point. They don't resolve. The FBI just takes interviews, and so it's not.
But it would have been objective in investigation in the public's eye. That you would have had
maybe it would have robbed a talking point that the FBI. I mean, politically, maybe that was a big blunder by Republicans. Whether or not it would have provided any more information.
And perhaps there's some chance that they might have found something that would have made things clearer. But
it might have cleared him.
Well, indeed, and some people have argued that there should be an FBI investigation for the purposes of clearing him. But I think embedded in your question, Gail, which is could this have been better? Largely embedded in this is that this is really not the best venue to adjudicate the trickiest, thorniest questions in the culture that are bedeviling all parts of the culture. Exactly. And so it is inevitably fraught, and this is not really the best place to unwind those questions, because we've yet to find a best place for that yet in our culture.
How much we've learned that we did it in 1991 and now doing it all over again in the same way. And John, to your point, that it not necessarily being the most effective way to do it, but this is how it's happening. Yeah. Right now. We see Senate Judiciary Chairman, Republican Chairman Chuck Grassley heading back in. Lindsey Graham heading back in. He says he feels ambushed by the process. Orrin Hatch, you see there. So senators making their way back in. There's your Republican picked questioner, Rachel Mitchell, also on her way back in. John Kennedy to the hearing room right now. John Cornyn, who we heard from before, and his words, John Cornyn's words were, I would say, more measured than Lindsey Graham's were immediately after him. Lindsey Graham certainly had some very strong opinions about what has taken place so far. You see Ted Cruz walking back in, Ben Sass. So all senators, Jeff Flake. Again, and you just saw a few of the senators who you're going to be watching very closely, not just this afternoon, but in the next few days, as we figure out, A, whether this first vote, A, what happens this afternoon, B, whether a vote takes place tomorrow, and then C, whether one takes place after that early next week regarding Brett Kavanaugh and the Supreme Court. They took a break now. It was about 50 minutes ago, and they said it was going to be a 45-minute break in between when Christine Blasey Ford testified and when Judge Brett Kavanaugh testified. So it's now been a little more than that 45 minutes. We've been asking the question of whether Judge Kavanaugh had been watching some of this testimony. We don't know the answer to that. We do know that during part of this time, he was obviously making his way from his home to the hearing itself. We are also told that the president has been watching this hearing. He also was in transit heading to D.C. from New York, where he was for the UN meetings. So the folks involved intimately in this, as well as the rest of the country, watching everything that has been happening here so closely today, and will continue to watch this afternoon, as we just don't know at this point. Ricky, what's going to happen this afternoon?
No, we don't. I mean, we can anticipate as much as we can that you're going to see an indignant Brett Kavanaugh, but you're going to also see a passionate one.
Let's listen and watch as Brett Kavanaugh walks in.
He's holding his hand, her hand, right?
Yes, he was holding his wife's hand.
Yeah. They had the camera.
I would hope so.
Judge Kavanaugh walking to that hearing room, holding hands with his wife, a blue tie, as he makes his way to the hearing table. Just his name in front of him. Christine Blasey Ford was flanked by her attorneys. I don't see other seats there right now, so it's just Brett Kavanaugh by himself in that chair, it would appear right now, as he prepares to receive questions in 5-minute increments from 11 senators on the Senate Judiciary Committee and 10 Democrats. At this point, a hearing that will, there's Chuck Grassley, Dianne Feinstein, a hearing that will likely take us into the dinner hour at this point. Let's again listen in as Judge Kavanaugh sits down.
Judge Kavanaugh, we welcome you. Are you ready? I have something I want to clear up from the last meeting that doesn't affect you. So before I swear you, I would like to explain my response to Senator Kennedy right after the break. At that time, I entered into the record the statements of 3 witnesses Dr. Ford said were also at the party. These statements were provided to us under penalty of felony by lying to, if you lie to Congress. As soon as my team learned the names of these 3 potential witnesses, we immediately reached out to them requesting an interview. In response, all 3 submitted statements to us denying any knowledge of the gathering Dr. Ford described. If we had calls with them, we would have invited the minority to join. Every time that we've received any information regarding Judge Kavanaugh, we've sought to immediately follow through and investigate. The minority staff sat on Dr. Ford's letter for weeks, and staff told us that they believed it is, quote, highly inappropriate to have these follow-up calls before the FBI finishes its investigation, end quote, even though the FBI had completed its background information. When we followed up with Judge Kavanaugh after we received Dr. Ford's allegations, the ranking member staff didn't join us, even though these calls are usually done on a bipartisan basis. They joined other calls with the judge, but they didn't participate or ask any questions. Would you please rise, sir?
Yes.
Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give before the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Yeah. And like we offered to Senator, or to Dr. Ford, you can take whatever time you want now for your opening statement. Then we'll go to questions. So proceed.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Feinstein, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to make my statement. I wrote it myself yesterday afternoon and evening. No one has seen a draft or it except for one of my former law clerks. This is my statement. Less than 2 weeks ago, Dr. Ford publicly accused me of committing wrongdoing at an event more than 36 years ago when we were both in high school. I denied the allegation immediately, categorically, and unequivocally. All 4 people allegedly at the event, including Dr. Ford's longtime friend, Ms. Kaiser, have said they recall no such event. Her longtime friend, Ms. Kaiser, said under penalty of felony that she does not know me and does not believe she ever saw me at a party ever. Here is the quote from Ms. Kaiser's attorney's letter. Quote, simply put, Ms. Kaiser does not know Mr. Kavanaugh, and she has no recollection of ever being at a party or gathering where he was present, with or without Dr. Ford. End quote. Think about that fact. The day after the allegation appeared, I told this committee that I wanted a hearing as soon as possible to clear my name. I demanded a hearing for the very next day. Unfortunately, it took the committee 10 days to get to this hearing. In those 10 long days, as was predictable, and as I predicted, my family and my name have been totally and permanently destroyed by vicious and false additional accusations. The 10-day delay has been harmful to me and my family, to the Supreme Court, and to the country. When this allegation first arose, I welcomed any kind of investigation, Senate, FBI, or otherwise. The committee now has conducted a thorough investigation, and I've cooperated fully. I know that any kind of investigation, Senate, FBI, Montgomery County Police, whatever, will clear me. Listen to the people I know. Listen to the people who have known me my whole life. Listen to the people I've grown up with and worked with and played with and coached with and dated and taught and gone to games with and had beers with. And listen to the witnesses who allegedly were at this event 36 years ago. Listen to Miss Kaiser. She does not know me. I was not at the party described by Dr. Ford. This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. The Constitution gives the Senate an important role in the confirmation process, but you have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy. Since my nomination in July, there's been a frenzy on the left to come up with something, anything, to block my confirmation. Shortly after I was nominated, the Democratic Senate leader said he would, quote, oppose me with everything he's got. A Democratic senator on this committee publicly referred to me as evil. Evil. Think about that word. And said that those who supported me were, quote, complicit in evil. Another Democratic senator on this committee said, quote, Judge Kavanaugh is your worst nightmare. A former head of the Democratic National Committee said, quote, Judge Kavanaugh will threaten the lives of millions of Americans for decades to come. I understand the passions of the moment, but I would say to those senators, your words have meaning. Millions of Americans listened carefully to you. Given comments like those, is it any surprise that people have been willing to do anything, to make any physical threat against my family, to send any violent email to my wife, to make any kind of allegation against me and against my friends, to blow me up and take me down? You sowed the wind. For decades to come, I fear that the whole country will reap the whirlwind. The behavior of several of the Democratic members of this committee at my hearing a few weeks ago was an embarrassment. But at least it was just a good old-fashioned attempt at borking. Those efforts didn't work. When I did at least okay enough at the hearings that it looked like I might actually get confirmed, a new tactic was needed. Some of you were lying in wait and had it ready. This first allegation was held in secret for weeks by a Democratic member of this committee and by staff. It would be needed only if you couldn't take me out on the merits. When it was needed, this allegation was unleashed and publicly deployed over Dr. Ford's wishes. And then, as no doubt was expected, if not planned, came a long series of false last-minute smears designed to scare me and drive me out of the process before any hearing occurred. Crazy stuff. Gangs, illegitimate children, fights on boats in Rhode Island. All nonsense, reported breathlessly and often uncritically by the media. This has destroyed my family and my good name, a good name built up through decades of very hard work and public service at the highest levels of the American government. This whole two-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups. This is a circus. The consequences will extend long past my nomination. The consequences will be with us for decades. This grotesque and coordinated character assassination will dissuade competent and good people of all political persuasions from serving our country. And as we all know, in the United States political system of the early 2000s, what goes around comes around. I am an optimistic guy. I always try to be on the sunrise side of the mountain, to be optimistic about the day that is coming. But today, I have to say that I fear for the future. Last time I was here, I told this committee that a federal judge must be independent, not swayed by public or political pressure. I said I was such a judge, and I am. I will not be intimidated into withdrawing from this process. You've tried hard. You've given it your all. No one can question your effort. But your coordinated and well-funded effort to destroy my good name and destroy my family will not drive me out. The vile threats of violence against my family will not drive me out. You may defeat me in the final vote, but you'll never get me to quit. Never. I'm here today to tell the truth. I've never sexually assaulted anyone. Not in high school, not in college, not ever. Sexual assault is horrific. One of my closest friends to this day is a woman who was sexually abused and who in the 1990s, when we were in our 30s, confided in me about the abuse and sought my advice. I was one of the only people she consulted. Allegations of sexual assault must always be taken seriously, always. Those who make allegations always deserve to be heard. At the same time, the person who is the subject of the allegations also deserves to be heard. Due process is a foundation of the American rule of law. Due process means listening to both sides. As I told you at my hearing 3 weeks ago, I'm the only child of Martha and Ed Kavanaugh. They are here today. When I was 10, my mom went to law school, and as a lawyer, she worked hard and overcame barriers, including the workplace sexual harassment that so many women faced at the time and still face today. She became a trailblazer, one of Maryland's earliest women prosecutors and trial judges. She and my dad taught me the importance of equality and respect for all people, and she inspired me to be a lawyer and a judge. Last time I was here, I told you that when my mom was a prosecutor and I was in high school, she used to practice her closing arguments at the dining room table on my dad and me. As I told you, her trademark line was, "Use your common sense. What rings true? What rings false?" Her trademark line is a good reminder as we sit here today, some 36 years after the alleged event occurred, when there is no corroboration, and indeed it is refuted by the people allegedly there. After I have been in the public arena for 26 years without even a hint, a whiff of an allegation like this, and when my nomination to the Supreme Court was just about to be voted on at a time when I'm called evil by a Democratic member of this committee, while Democratic opponents of my nomination say people will die if I am confirmed. This onslaught of last-minute allegations does not ring true. I'm not questioning that Dr. Ford may have been sexually assaulted by some person in some place at some time. But I have never done this to her or to anyone. That's not who I am. It is not who I was. I am innocent of this charge. I intend no ill will to Dr. Ford and her family. The other night, Ashley and my daughter Liza said their prayers, and little Liza, all of 10 years old, said to Ashley, we should pray for the woman. It's a lot of wisdom from a 10-year-old. We mean no ill will. First, let's start with my career. For the last 26 years, since 1992, I've served in many high-profile and sensitive government positions for which the FBI has investigated my background 6 separate times. 6 separate FBI background investigations over 26 years, all of them after the event alleged here. I have been in the public arena and under extreme public scrutiny for decades. In 1992, I worked for the Office of Solicitor General in the Department of Justice. In 1993, I clerked on the Supreme Court for Justice Anthony Kennedy. I spent 4 years in the Independent Counsel's Office during the 1990s. That office was the subject of enormous scrutiny from the media and the public. During 1998, the year of the impeachment of President Clinton, our office generally, and I personally, were in the middle of an intense national media and political spotlight. I and other leading members of Ken Starr's office were opposition researched from head to toe, from birth through the present day. Recall the people who were exposed that year of 1998 as having engaged in some sexual wrongdoing or indiscretions in their past. One person on the left even paid $1 million for people to report evidence of sexual wrongdoing, and it worked. He exposed some prominent people. Nothing about me. From 2001 to 2006, I worked for President George W. Bush in the White House. As staff secretary, I was by President Bush's side for 3 years and was entrusted with the nation's most sensitive secrets. I traveled on Air Force One all over the country and the world with President Bush. I went everywhere with him, from Texas to Pakistan, from Alaska to Australia, from Buckingham Palace to the Vatican. 3 years in the West Wing, 5.5 years in the White House. I was then nominated to be a judge on the D.C. Circuit. I was thoroughly vetted by the White House, the FBI, the American Bar Association, and this committee. I sat before this committee for 2 thorough confirmation hearings in 2004 and 2006. For the past 12 years leading up to my nomination for this job, I've served in a very public arena as a federal judge on what is often referred to as the second most important court in the country. I've handled some of the most significant and sensitive cases affecting the lives and liberties of the American people. I have been a good judge. And for this nomination, another FBI background investigation, another American Bar Association investigation, 31 hours of hearings, 65 senator meetings, 1,200 written questions, more than all previous Supreme Court nominees combined. Throughout that entire time, throughout my 53 years and 7 months on this earth until last week, no one ever accused me of any kind of sexual misconduct. No one, ever. A lifetime of public service and a lifetime of high-profile public service at the highest levels of American government, and never a hint of anything of this kind. And that's because nothing of this kind ever happened. Second, let's turn to specifics. I categorically and unequivocally deny the allegation against me by Dr. Ford. I never had any sexual or physical encounter of any kind with Dr. Ford. I never attended a gathering like the one Dr. Ford describes in her allegation. I've never sexually assaulted Dr. Ford or anyone. Again, I am not questioning that Dr. Ford may have been sexually assaulted by some person in some place at some time. But I've never done that to her or to anyone. Dr. Ford's allegation stems from a party that she alleges occurred during the summer of 1982, 36 years ago. I was 17 years old between my junior and senior years of high school at Georgetown Prep, a rigorous all-boys Catholic Jesuit high school in Rockville, Maryland. When my friends and I spent time together at parties on weekends, it was usually with friends from nearby Catholic all-girls high schools, Stone Ridge, Holy Child, Visitation, Immaculata, Holy Cross. Dr. Ford did not attend one of those schools. She attended an independent private school named Holton Arms, and she was a year behind me. She and I did not travel in the same social circles. It is possible that we met at some point at some events, although I do not recall that. To repeat, all of the people identified by Dr. Ford as being present at the party have said they do not remember any such party ever happening. Importantly, her friend, Ms. Kaiser, has not only denied knowledge of the party, Ms. Kaiser said under penalty of felony, she does not know me, does not recall ever being at a party with me ever. And my two male friends who were allegedly there, who knew me well, have told this committee under penalty of felony that they do not recall any such party and that I never did or would do anything like this. Dr. Ford's allegation is not merely uncorroborated. It is refuted by the very people she says were there, including by a longtime friend of hers. Refuted. Third, Dr. Ford has said that this event occurred at a house near Columbia Country Club, which is at the corner of Connecticut Avenue and East-West Highway in Chevy Chase, Maryland. In her letter to Senator Feinstein, she said that there were 4 other people at the house. But none of those people, nor I, lived near Columbia Country Club. As of the summer of 1982, Dr. Ford was 15 and could not drive yet, and she did not live near Columbia Country Club. She says confidently that she had 1 beer at the party, but she does not say how she got to the house in question, or how she got home, or whose house it was. Fourth, I've submitted to this committee detailed calendars recording my activities in the summer of 1982. Why did I keep calendars? My dad started keeping detailed calendars of his life in 1978. He did so as both a calendar and a diary. He's a very organized guy, to put it mildly. Christmas time, we sit around and he regales us with old stories. Old milestones, old weddings, old events from his calendars. In 9th grade, in 1980, I started keeping calendars of my own. For me also, it's both a calendar and a diary. I've kept such calendars, diaries for the last 38 years. Mine are not as good as my dad's in some years. And when I was a kid, The calendars are about what you would expect from a kid. Some goofy parts, some embarrassing parts. But I did have the summer of 1982 documented pretty well. The event described by Dr. Ford presumably happened on a weekend, because I believe everyone worked and had jobs in the summers. And in any event, a drunken early evening event of the kind she describes presumably happened on a weekend. If it was a weekend, my calendars show that I was out of town almost every weekend night before football training camp started in late August. The only weekend nights that I was in D.C. were Friday, June 4, when I was with my dad at a pro golf tournament. And had my high school achievement test at 8:30 the next morning. I also was in D.C. on Saturday night, August 7th, but I was at a small gathering at Becky's house in Rockville with Matt, Denise, Lori, and Jenny. Their names are all listed on my calendar. I won't use their last names here. And then on the weekend of August 20 to 22nd, I was staying at the Garretts with Pat and Chris as we did final preparations for football training camp that began on Sunday the 22nd. As the calendars confirm, that weekend before a brutal football training camp schedule was no time for parties. So let me emphasize this point. If the party described by Dr. Ford happened in the summer of 1982 on a weekend night, my calendar shows all but definitively that I was not there. During the weekdays in the summer of 1982, as you can see, I was out of town for 2 weeks of the summer for a trip to the beach with friends and at the legendary 5-star basketball camp in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. When I was in town, I spent much of my time working out, lifting weights, playing basketball, or hanging out and having some beers with friends as we talked about life and football and school and girls. Some have noticed that I didn't have church on Sundays on my calendars. I also didn't list brushing my teeth. And for me, going to church on Sundays was like brushing my teeth. Automatic. Still is. In the summer of 1981, I had worked construction. In the summer of 1982, my job was cutting lawns. I had my own business of sorts. You see some specifics about the lawn cutting listed on the August calendar page. When I had to time the last lawn cuttings of the summer of various lawns before football training camp. I played in a lot of summer league basketball games for the Georgetown prep team at night at Blair High School in Silver Spring. Many nights I worked out with other guys at Tobin's house. He was the great quarterback on our football team, and his dad ran workouts or lifted weights at Georgetown Prep in preparation for the football season. I attended and watched many sporting events, as is my habit to this day. The calendars show a few weekday gatherings at friends' houses after a workout or just to meet up and have some beers. But none of those gatherings included the group of people that Dr. Ford has identified. And as my calendars show, I was very precise about listing who was there. Very precise. And keep in mind, my calendars also were diaries of sorts, forward-looking and backward-looking, just like my dad's. You can see, for example, that I crossed out missed workouts and the canceled doctor's appointments, and that I listed the precise people who had shown up for certain events. The calendars are obviously not dispositive on their own, but they are another piece of evidence in the mix for you to consider. Fifth, Dr. Ford's allegation is radically inconsistent with my record and my character from my youth to the present day. As students at an all-boys Catholic Jesuit school, many of us became friends and remain friends to this day with students at local Catholic all-girls schools. One feature of my life that has remained true to the present day is that I've always had a lot of close female friends. I'm not talking about girlfriends. I'm talking about friends who are women. That started in high school. Maybe it was because I'm an only child and had no sisters. But anyway, we had no social media or text or email, and we talked on the phone. I remember talking almost every night, it seemed, to my friends Amy or Julie. Or Kristen, or Karen, or Suzanne, or Maura, or Megan, or Nikki. The list goes on. Friends for a lifetime, built on a foundation of talking through school and life starting at age 14. Several of those great women are in the seats right behind me today. My friends and I sometimes got together and had parties on weekends. The drinking age was 18 in Maryland for most of my time in high school and was 18 in D.C. for all of my time in high school. I drank beer with my friends. Almost everyone did. Sometimes I had too many beers. Sometimes others did. I liked beer. I still like beer. But I did not drink beer to the point of blacking out, and I never sexually assaulted anyone. There is a bright line between drinking beer, which I gladly do, and which I fully embrace, and sexually assaulting someone, which is a violent crime. If every American who drinks beer, or every American who drank beer in high school, is suddenly presumed guilty of sexual assault, we'll be in an ugly new place in this country. I never committed sexual assault. As high school students, we sometimes did goofy or stupid things. I doubt we are alone in looking back at high school and cringing at some things. For one thing, our yearbook was a disaster. I think some editors and students wanted the yearbook to be some combination of Animal House, Caddyshack, and Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which were all recent movies at that time. Many of us went along in the yearbook to the point of absurdity. This past week, my friends and I have cringed. When we read about it and talked to each other. One thing in particular we're sad about. One of our good female friends who we would admire and went to dances with had her name used on the yearbook page with the term alumnus. That yearbook reference was clumsily intended to show affection and that she was one of us. But in this circus, the media has interpreted the term as related to sex. It was not related to sex. As the woman herself noted to the media on the record, she and I never had any sexual interaction at all. I'm so sorry to her for that yearbook reference. This may sound a bit trivial, given all that we are here for, but one thing I want to try to make sure of in the future is my friendship with her. She was and is a great person. As to sex, this is not a topic I ever imagined would come up at a judicial confirmation hearing, but I want to give you a full picture of who I was. I never had sexual intercourse or anything close to it during high school or for many years after that. In some crowds, I was probably a little outwardly shy about my inexperience. Tried to hide that. At the same time, I was also inwardly proud of it. For me and the girls who I was friends with, that lack of major or rampant sexual activity in high school was a matter of faith and respect and caution. The committee has a letter from 65 women who knew me in high school. They said that I always treated them with dignity and respect. That letter came together in one night, 35 years after graduation, while a sexual assault allegation was pending against me in a very fraught and public situation where they knew they'd be vilified if they defended me. Think about that. They put themselves on the line for me. Those are some awesome women, and I love all of them. You also have a letter from women who knew me in college. Most were varsity athletes. And they described that I treated them as friends and equals and supported them in their sports at a time when women's sports was emerging in the wake of Title IX. I thank all of them for all of their texts and their emails and their support. One of those women friends from college, a self-described liberal and feminist, sent me a text last night that said, quote, "Deep breaths. You're a good man, a good man, a good man." A text yesterday from another of those women friends from college said, quote, "Brett, be strong. Pulling for you to my core." A third text yesterday from yet another of those women I'm friends with from college said, "I'm holding you in the light of God." As I said in my opening statement the last time I was with you, cherish your friends, look out for your friends, lift up your friends, love your friends. I've felt that love more over the last 2 weeks than I ever have in my life. I thank all my friends. I love all my friends. Throughout my life, I've devoted huge efforts to encouraging and promoting the careers of women. I will put my record up against anyone's, male or female. I am proud of the letter from 84 women who worked with me at the Bush White House from 2001 to 2006 and described me as, quote, "a man of the highest integrity." Read the op-ed from Sarah Day from Yarmouth, Maine. She worked in Oval Office operations outside of President Bush's office. Here's what she recently wrote in centralmaine.com. And today she stands by her comments. Quote, "Brett was an advocate for young women like me. He encouraged me to take on more responsibility and to feel confident in my role. In fact, during the 2004 Republican National Convention, Brett gave me the opportunity to help with the preparation and review of the president's remarks, something I never would have had the chance to do if he had not included me. And he didn't just include me in the work. He made sure I was at Madison Square Garden to watch the president's speech instead of back at the hotel watching on TV. End quote. As a judge since 2006, I've had the privilege of hiring 4 recent law school graduates to serve as my law clerks each year. The law clerks for federal judges are the best and brightest graduates of American law schools. They work for 1-year terms for judges after law school, and then they move on in their careers. For judges, training these young lawyers is an important responsibility. The clerks will become the next generation of American lawyers and leaders, judges and senators. Just after I took the bench in 2006, there was a major New York Times story about the low numbers of women law clerks at the Supreme Court and federal appeals courts. I took notice and I took action. A majority of my 48 law clerks over the last 12 years have been women. In a letter to this committee, my women law clerks said I was one of the strongest advocates in the federal judiciary for women lawyers. And they wrote that the legal profession is fairer and more equal because of me. In my time on the bench, no federal judge, not a single one in the country, has sent more women law clerks to clerk on the Supreme Court than I have. Before this allegation arose 2 weeks ago, I was required to start making certain administrative preparations for my possible transfer to the Supreme Court, just in case I was confirmed. As part of that, I had to, in essence, contingently hire a first group of 4 law clerks who could be available to clerk at the Supreme Court for me on a moment's notice. I did so and contingently hired 4 law clerks. All 4 are women. If confirmed, I'll be the first justice in the history of the Supreme Court to have a group of all women law clerks. That is who I am. That is who I was. Over the past 12 years, I've taught constitutional law to hundreds of students, primarily at Harvard Law School, while I was hired by then Dean and now Justice Elena Kagan. One of my former women students, a Democrat, testified to this committee that I was an even-handed professor who treats people fairly and with respect. In a letter to this committee, my former students, male and female alike, wrote that I displayed a character that impressed us all. I love teaching law, but thanks to what some of you on this side of the committee have unleashed, I may never be able to teach again. For the past 7 years, I've coached my 2 daughters' basketball teams. You saw many of those girls when they came to my hearing for a couple of hours. You have a letter from the parents of the girls I coached that describe my dedication, commitment, and character. I coach because I know that a girl's confidence on the basketball court translates into confidence in other aspects of life. I love coaching more than anything I've ever done in my whole life. But thanks to what some of you on this side of the committee have unleashed, I may never be able to coach again. I've been a judge for 12 years. I have a long record of service to America and to the Constitution. I revere the Constitution. I am deeply grateful to President Trump for nominating me. He was so gracious to my family and me on the July night he announced my nomination at the White House. I thank him for his steadfast support. When I accepted the President's nomination, Ashley and I knew this process would be challenging. We never expected that it would devolve into this. Explaining this to our daughters has been about the worst experience of our lives. Ashley has been a rock. I thank God every day for Ashley and my family. We live in a country devoted to due process and the rule of law. That means taking allegations seriously. But if the mere allegation, the mere assertion of an allegation, a refuted allegation from 36 years ago, is enough to destroy a person's life and career, we will have abandoned the basic principles of fairness and due process that define our legal system and our country. I ask you to judge me by the standard that you would want applied to your father, your husband, your brother, or your son. My family and I intend no ill will toward Dr. Ford or her family. But I swear today, under oath, before the Senate and the nation, before my family and God, I am innocent of this charge.
Thank you, Judge Kavanaugh. Before we start questions, I won't repeat what I said this morning, but we'll do it the same way as we did for Dr. Ford, and 5-minute rounds. And so we will start with Ms. Mitchell.
Good afternoon, Judge Kavanaugh. We have not met. My name is Rachel Mitchell. I'd like to go over a couple of guidelines for our question and answer session today. If I ask a question...
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. If I ask a question that you do not understand, please ask me to clarify it or ask it in a different way. I may ask a question where I incorporate some information you've already provided. If I get it wrong, please correct me. I'm not going to ask you to guess. If you do estimate, please let me know you're estimating. Now, I want to make sure that all of the committee members have gotten a copy of the definition of sexual behavior.
Yes, at least I have one.
Okay.
We all do.
Yeah.
And you have that as well, Judge Kavanaugh?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, have you been given or reviewed a copy of the questions that I will be asking you?
No.
Has anyone told you the questions that I will be asking you?
No.
I want you to take a moment to review the definition that's before you of sexual behavior. Have you had a chance to review it?
I have. I may refer back to it if I can.
Yes, please. I'd like to point out two specific parts. Among the examples of sexual behavior, it includes rubbing or grinding your genitals against somebody, clothed or unclothed. And I would also point out that the definition applies whether or not the acts were sexually motivated or, for example, horseplay. Do you understand the definition I've given you?
I do.
And again, if at any time you need to review that, please let me know. Dr. Ford has stated that somewhere between 5 or 6 people were present at the gathering on this date. You, Mark Judge, Leland Ingham at the time, or Leland Kaiser now, Patrick P.J. Smith, Dr. Ford, and an unnamed boy. Do you know Mark Judge?
I do.
How do you know him?
He was a friend at Georgetown Prep starting in 9th grade. He's someone we were in our, group of friends. We're a very friendly group in class. You saw the letter that's been sent by my friends from Georgetown Prep. Funny guy, great writer, popular, developed a serious addiction problem that lasted decades, near death a couple times from his addiction. Suffered tremendously from.
What is your relationship with him like now?
I haven't talked to him in a couple of years. We've probably been on, mass emails or group emails that go around among my high school friends.
Okay. And how did you know Patrick Smith?
Also 9th grade, Georgetown Prep. Went by PJ then. He and I lived close to one another. Played football together. He was defensive tackle. I was the cornerback, wide receiver. We carpooled to school along with D. Davis every year, the 3 of us, for 2 years. I didn't have a car, so one of the 2 of them would drive every day, and I'd be in the, they'd pick me up.
What's your relationship like with him now?
He lives in the area. I see him once in a while. I haven't seen him since this thing.
Do you know Leland Ingham or Leland Kaiser?
I know of her, and it's possible I, met her in high school at some point at some event. Yeah, I know her. I know of her, and again, I don't want to rule out having crossed paths with her in high school.
Similar to your statements about knowing Dr. Ford?
Correct.
Okay. Senator Feinstein.
Judge Kavanaugh, it's my understanding that you have denied the allegations by Dr. Ford, Ms. Ramirez, and Ms. Swetnick. Is that correct?
Yes.
All 3 of these women have asked the FBI to investigate their claims. I listened carefully to what you said. Your concern is evident and clear. And if you're very confident of your position, and you appear to be, why aren't you also asking the FBI to investigate these claims?
Senator, I'll do whatever the committee wants. I wanted a hearing the day after the allegation came up. I wanted to be here that day. Instead, 10 days passed where all this nonsense is coming out, that I'm in gangs, I'm on boats in Rhode Island, I'm in Colorado, I'm cited all over the place. And these things are printed and run breathlessly by cable news. I wanted a hearing the next day. My family's been destroyed by this, Senator. Destroyed.
And
whoever wants, whatever the committee decides, I'm all in immediately. I'm all in immediately.
And the terrible and hard part of this is, when we get an allegation, we're not in a position to prove it or disprove it. Therefore, we have to depend on some outside authority for it. And it just seemed to me then, when these allegations came forward, that you would want the FBI to investigate those claims and clear it up once and for all.
Senator, the committee investigates. It's not for me to say how to do it, but just so you know, the FBI doesn't reach a conclusion. They would give you a couple 302s that just tell you what we said. So I'm here. I wanted to be here. I wanted to be here the next day. It's an outrage that I was not allowed to come and immediately defend my name and say, I didn't do this, and give you all this evidence. I'm not even in D.C. on the weekends in the summer of 1982. This happened on a weekday? Well, when I'm not at a Blair High School for a summer league game? I'm not at Tobin's house working out? I'm not at a movie with Suzanne? You know, I wanted to be here right away.
Well, the difficult thing is that these hearings are set and set by the majority, but I'm talking about getting the evidence and having the evidence looked at, and I don't understand. You know, we hear from the witnesses, but the FBI isn't interviewing them and isn't giving us any facts. So all we have.
You're interviewing me. You're interviewing me. You're doing it, Senator. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're doing it. There's no conclusions reached.
And what you're saying, if I understand it, is that the allegations by Dr. Ford, Ms. Ramirez, and Ms. Swetnick are wrong.
Yeah, that is emphatically what I'm saying. Emphatically. The Swetnick thing is a joke. That is a farce.
Would you like to say more about it?
No.
Okay. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Mitchell.
Dr. Ford has described you as being intoxicated at a party. Did you consume alcohol during your high school years?
Yes, we drank beer. My friends and I, the boys and girls, yes, we drank beer. I liked beer, still like beer. We drank beer. The drinking age, as I noted, was 18, so the seniors were legal. Senior year in high school, people were legal to drink. And we drank beer. And I said sometimes probably had too many beers, and sometimes other people had too many beers. We drank beer. We liked beer.
What do you consider to be too many beers?
I don't know. You know, whatever the chart says on your blood alcohol chart.
When you talked to Fox News the other night, you said that there were times in high school when people might have had too many beers on occasion. Does that include you?
Sure.
Okay. Have you ever passed out from drinking?
Passed out would be no, but I've gone to sleep. But I've never blacked out. That's the allegation, and that's wrong.
So let's talk about your time in high school. In high school, after drinking, did you ever wake up in a different location than you remembered passing out or going to sleep?
No, no.
Did you ever wake up with your clothes in a different condition or fewer clothes on than you remembered when you went to sleep or passed out?
No, no.
Did you ever did anyone ever tell you about something that happened in your presence that you didn't remember during a time that you had been drinking?
No. We drank beer, and you know, so did I think the vast majority of people our age at the time. But in any event, we drank beer and still do. So whatever, yeah.
During the time in high school when you would be drinking, did anyone ever tell you about something that you did not remember?
No.
Dr. Ford described a small gathering of people at a suburban Maryland home in the summer of 1982. She said that Mark Judge, P.J. Smith, and Leland Ingham also were present, as well as an unknown male. and that the people were drinking to varying degrees. Were you ever at a gathering that fits that description?
No, as I've said in my opening statement.
Dr. Ford described an incident where she was alone in a room with you and Mark Judge. Have you ever been alone in a room with Dr. Ford and Mark Judge?
No.
Dr. Ford described an incident where you were grinding your genitals on her. Have you ever ground or rubbed your genitals against Dr. Ford?
No.
Dr. Ford described an incident where you covered her mouth with your hand. Have you ever covered Dr. Ford's mouth with your hand?
No.
Dr. Ford described an incident where you tried to remove her clothes. Have you ever tried to remove her clothes?
No.
Referring back to the definition of sexual behavior that I have given you, have you ever at any time engaged in sexual behavior with Dr. Ford?
No.
Have you ever engaged in sexual behavior with Dr. Ford, even if it was consensual?
No.
I want to talk about your calendars. You submitted to the committee copies of the handwritten calendars that you've talked about for the months of May, June, July, and August of 1982. Do you have them in front of you?
I do.
Did you create these calendars in the sense of all the handwriting that's on them?
Yes.
Okay. Is it exclusively your handwriting?
Yes.
When did you make these entries?
In 1982.
Has anything been changed for those since 1982?
No.
Do these calendars represent your plans for each day, or do they document, in other words, prospectively, or do they document what actually occurred more like a diary?
They're both forward-looking and backward-looking, as you can tell by looking at them, because I cross out certain doctor's appointments that didn't happen, or one night where I was supposed to lift weights, I crossed that out because I obviously didn't make it that night. So you can see things that I didn't do crossed out in retrospect. And also when I list the specific people who I was with, that is likely backward-looking.
You explained that you kept these calendars because your father started keeping them in 1978, I believe you said.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you kept them. In other words, you wrote on them, but why did you keep them up until this time?
Well, he's kept them too since 1978, so he's a good role model.
Ms. Mitchell, you'll have to stop.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Judge Kavanaugh has asked for a break, so we'll take a 15-minute break.
Okay, 15-minute break has been called by Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley following searing, painful, and tearful opening remarks from Judge Brett Kavanaugh and a first round of questions and a little bit more that came from the prosecutor picked by Republicans, Rachel Mitchell, and then Dianne Feinstein. But we've all been sitting here in Washington watching all of what has just happened. And as we bring in Bianna Golodryga, John Dickerson, also co-host of CBS This Morning, back with us. John's been here all day. Ricky Kleeman and Jan Crawford, both legal analysts here with CBS News, have been with us all afternoon. It's been difficult to watch many times, Ricky.
Well, I think you almost have to look away because it's so painful. And what Brett Kavanaugh has done was exactly what he should have done. It's emotional, it's passionate, it is indignant, and you see how his life has been torn asunder. And I don't know how you ever fake that. There's an authenticity to it that you do have to look away. It's like no matter how good Dr. Ford was and how credible she was, that now you have exactly the complete counterbalance.
This may be the challenge facing a lot of Americans as they try to assess this day, though, is that if they find authenticity in both what they saw in the morning and also what they saw in the afternoon, how do you reconcile those two things, John? I mean, is that not one of the questions that some of us are asking right now?
Absolutely right. I mean, this was his opening statement was from a man who had been wrung out by the process, one long extended kind of blast of anguish. And so you have two people who seem quite authentic in their genuine pain, ability to demonstrate what that pain has done to their lives. And so the senators are faced with this question of two people who might seem totally compelling in what they say, and what do they do about that? And how do they articulate the support for their vote in the end? And that's, they are in as about as tough a spot as you could be in, those senators who were genuinely of an open mind about how this was going forward.
It was almost as if you saw him defending his character and his honor more than he was the nomination. You saw him come out and initially show rage. There was a lot of anger. In his opening statement, he said that he had written it almost the day after the initial accusation from Dr. Ford came out. That anger, I think, once he started talking about his family and the women in his family and his life, his daughters, his wife, his mother, turned into pure emotion. And at times he had to stop, and you thought that he was going to break down in tears.
And his father.
And his father.
All the people who influenced him or that he had tried to model his life off of. He did the calendars because his father did. And then the people that he believed he was going to be a role model for, his children. When he started talking about them, that's when he became the most emotional. And, you know, yes, you saw very angry and, as you said, very authentic. And how could he not be? As he said, he's been hung out there. No real opportunity to defend himself. Watch some of these allegations that he adamantly denies and said he's never been accused of. Imagine, you know, from his perspective, which is what we saw, a world where he was very well headed for confirmation, as he said, and then he believes, as he testified, when Democrats saw they weren't able to do it that way, then this comes out. He sees this, and that was very powerful as well, because he framed that for the senators as well. This was, he believes, a Democratic hit job to keep him off the Supreme Court, and they were willing to stop at nothing, including dragging him, his family, everything he's worked for.
And he walked a fine line there, calling it a left-wing conspiracy theory, saying this is a circus, grotesque character assassination, sort of what goes around comes around, talking about his time in the Starr investigation, but a fine line in not going after Dr. Ford, and even mentioning that his 10-year-old daughter said we should pray for her. So that, if anything, I think anybody that thought that he was going to be attacking her, that clearly didn't happen.
I have the senators who have to make this choice so much in my mind. I think that was a partisan argument. The Democratic rebuttal would be, if this was a planned hit job, they would have done it on Gorsuch and didn't.
But that was just the court is not in the balance with Gorsuch.
True.
And the Republicans who voted for Trump because of the Supreme Court, no.
But I think his most compelling argument was not so much that this is all planned by the Democrats, but look at what the anguish that this process has caused, and what you will do to my family and me by not believing me.
No matter what you feel about these two human beings, this has been a painful and unforgettable day for this country, and it's not over yet. We want to listen to a little bit now of what we've just heard over these past hour and a half or so.
I was not at the party described by Dr. Ford. This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. The Constitution gives the Senate an important role in the confirmation process, but you have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy. I will not be intimidated into withdrawing from this process. You've tried hard. You've given it your all. No one can question your effort. But your coordinated and well-funded effort to destroy my good name and destroy my family will not drive me out. The vile threats of violence against my family will not drive me out. You may defeat me in the final vote, but you'll never get me to quit. Never. This has destroyed my family. and my good name. A good name built up through decades of very hard work and public service at the highest levels of the American government. The other night, Ashley and my daughter Liza said their prayers, and little Liza, all of 10 years old, said to Ashley, we should pray for the woman. It's a lot of wisdom from a 10-year-old. We mean no ill will. I wanted to be here the next day.